What would you do if you had 3 days inside of a mall infested with zombies? Well, one game answered that question, and you read the title, you know what we're talking about, the legendary game Dead Rising, and we have a hell of a game to unpack here. Coming from Capcom of Japan, the same guys behind the legendary Resident Evil franchise that I'm sure everybody knows now, developed exclusively for the American Xbox 360, this game takes place in a small town inside of Colorado. Some really interesting development history behind that one.
Distinguishing characteristics, jack shit.
You filled the shoes of Frank West, an independent freelance journalist who gets a tip-off to visit this small town inside of Colorado to look into a zombie outbreak. This is when you're dropped off onto the rooftop of a mall and you have to figure out what's going on, look for survivors, and get to the bottom of it. You have 3 days to collect all the clues, get all the information you can, and save as many people as possible while getting out of there alive. And you do this by having an entire mall at your disposal as your playground sandbox. I always had a general idea of what Dead Rising was, but I severely underestimated what I was getting into because I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I'm gonna knock this game out in about 6 hours, make a cool video out of it. Well, that ended up being more like 30. So after an entire week of playing this game, I finally beat it, and I'm excited to finally talk to you guys about it because, damn, I've been sleeping on this one.
Don't be daydreaming out here.
Like I said, this game originally came out as an exclusive for the Xbox 360. However, they not too long ago, they remastered it for the PlayStation 4 and modern consoles, which allowed me to play this on the PS5. Ironically, this game from 2006 is what I've played most on my PlayStation 5 since I've gotten it. So don't let anybody tell you that there's not a demand for backwards compatibility because that's bullshit. I remember back in middle school, my friend was telling me about Dead Rising. He was like, yeah, you run around a mall and you just use anything as a weapon, and the guy says, yeah, a lot, like that.
Yeah.
Like a specific memory of mine is him like imitating the sound of Frank every time he tries on clothes or something. Yeah, that's burnt into my head. Let's start with the setting of Dead Rising, the mall. The mall is big. It's got everything you could want. Of course, you got your department stores like a perfume shop and your clothing stores, but you also got a grocery store, a sporting goods store like Bass Pro Shops, and you got a gun store too inside of a mall.
Red, white, and blue Americans.
You got pretty much everything you would want during a zombie apocalypse inside of one little area. You even got a nice little park in the center of the mall. That's pretty cool. One thing I really want to emphasize about this game is that it came out in 2006. This was basically a launch title for the Xbox 360. And playing this in 2022, it really doesn't feel this old. I mean, when I'm playing this in 2022, I'm just blown away by the amount of detail that's inside of this mall. I mean, you can use virtually everything as a weapon. Chairs, tables, potted plants. You can pick up skateboards off of the wall to ride around the map in. And you just have so much stuff compacted into this small space. It's kind of like a Yakuza title. And on top of that, as you can see, there's quite a few zombies in this game. The screen is just littered with them. You can jump on top of these crowds and just crowd surf the zombies, or if you're driving a car or pushing a shopping cart, you'll just plow through piles of them. This was some really impressive tech back in the day, and even today, it still looks great. If you're using a lawnmower on them, or a katana, or an auger, there's like gore everywhere and limbs coming off, and they definitely spent a lot of time getting the attention to detail right in the map. I mean, it feels like a convincing mall. You use bathrooms as save points in the mall, and they're exactly where you would expect them to be, like in the back corner of an area or inside of the movie theater. Just the overall branding and aesthetics inside of the mall just look really genuinely great. I'm on the gym right now, and you get a point bonus for running on the treadmill. The attention to detail is so good in a lot of areas that I almost didn't notice where it was bad in other areas. Like the fact that there's one entrance area for the entire mall. One entrance. If there was a fire inside of this mall, you'd be in trouble because there's no emergency escapes. Well, there are actually exit doors, but they all lead to this weird underground tunnel system under the mall. Or the fact that like right here in the gym, you got these sliding doors that open up, but at the grocery store, there isn't sliding doors for you to go in and out of with the carts. They're just doors that open with a handle. So I can imagine the act of going in and out with groceries being a big pain in the ass. But outside of that, it looks really great. It's a really great environment to spend time in. And because it's like you got this sandbox vibe going on, you'll want to spend a lot of time in it, but not too much time.
That's against regulations.
Because like I said, you have 3 days to get everything you need done in the game. You're picking up these clues from different characters that you meet to figure out what the hell's going on and why this outbreak happened. You're wanting to get the big scoop to make this big story, right? And this is where the game really started to catch me off guard, for a lack of a better word. because the game runs on this day-night cycle, and with each day passing, you have certain objectives that you have to complete or certain survivors that you can save at certain times. And if you don't get to these missions and complete them in the allotted time, you lose the entire story. So you can essentially fail the story in the game, not get your proper ending, and the game will continue to go for those 3 days. And this can be a real pain in the ass when it comes to saving your game, because say you save your game right before you're running out of time for a certain mission. Every time you load into that save, you'll fail the mission and lose that game every time. And back on the Xbox 360, you apparently only had one save. In the remaster, you can have like 6 different save slots, but in the original, if you screwed that save up, you were fucked for that game. Oh. Come on, I had to take a shit. But this is intentional by design because the game wants you to replay it a lot. Because see, Frank himself has a rank, like, I don't know, like an RPG. You rank your character up, and when you rank up, you get faster, more agile, you get more health. So if you die in the game, or a supporting character dies, or you miss a certain story element, you can actually leave the game and save your character state and keep your rank, but start a new game with those new stats. And you'll be doing this because the game gets progressively easier as you play it, and there will be certain things that you just can't pull off in your first playthrough that you'll be able to in the second one.
You did it, yeah!
There's a lot of different survivors that you can save throughout the game, and you will not be able to save all of them on your first playthrough. No damn way.
Goddamn pig!
But when you come through on the second playthrough, you'll be stronger and you'll be more apt to being able to save them. There's also just straight up things that you won't notice on your first playthrough, like when I went to save a survivor after failing the story in my first playthrough, I wasn't able to save her because I didn't talk to this specific story character, so she wouldn't trust me to follow her to safety. But when I revisited that point in my second playthrough, I was able to because she was like, oh, you know this person and they seem like somebody I should talk to, so I'll follow you to the safe room. And you don't get these little sub-stories and stuff if you don't complete the story in this way. Also, it's just a lot more fun to play the game again as this badass character who's ranked up and is stronger. You know, when you're the level 1 slime getting destroyed by the bosses, and you come back the second playthrough as the level 99 chief, the legend 37 gamer status, and you can just go and wipe the floor with all of them, it's just really satisfying. You'll also be playing the game again because there's 6 different endings apparently. Yeah, it's crazy. I've gotten 2 of them after 30 hours of playing the game, and there's 4 more. It's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Content like this would be a pre-order bonus, or it would be locked behind DLC paywalls, but in this game, they wanted you to replay it and experience this stuff in different ways. You'll also unlock different costumes and things for completing these different endings, like when you get the true ending, you'll unlock an infinity mode where it's like a survival mode where you have to survive in the mall for as long as possible and just see how far you can take it, just adding more value to playing the game more. So yeah, while in theory the game can be beaten in 6 hours, you're not gonna be doing that. Nope, not happening. Good luck.
What are you doing?
And playing the game and getting stronger ties into beating these bosses. There's no comparison. There's such a stark contrast between the first time I fought these bosses to the second time that it's not even funny. These bosses that you fight are called psychopaths. These are people who were average, ordinary people that eventually turn crazy because of the apocalypse. They all have their little micro stories that are intertwined into you meeting them and beating them, and they're all satisfying to fight. It's kind of similar to Metal Gear Solid's bosses and the way they're set up and the way they play out. It's really neat. It's really satisfying to actually be able to beat these guys, because the first time you do it, it's going to be infuriatingly frustrating, and the second time you do it, it might be incredibly easy. It's almost like they did that intentionally. As a reward for defeating the bosses, they'll drop a special weapon wherever you defeated them at, and it'll always spawn in there when you go back to it. On one of the bosses that you fight, you get a weapon. You get this mini chainsaw, which is extremely overpowered, and I think you can pretty much knock out all of the bosses with this thing easily. Maybe that was a little bit of an oversight, I don't know. But the Psychopath stories tie into the main story, and it almost makes you humanize with them a little bit. Like, they're supposed to be the bad guys, but you can kind of see why they turned the way they did. And it makes playing through the main story so satisfying. It's really good. The game has really good voice acting, despite the fact that it came from a Japanese developer and they probably had to outsource the voice acting. For 2006, this is really good stuff. If it wasn't for all of the Japanese quirks that are in this game, you probably wouldn't even know that it was a Japanese game with how good they pulled this off.
I just want you to appreciate the situation.
Well, we're up to our necks in zombies. Yeah, I think I appreciate the situation just fine.
Of course, there's some weird translation errors on the signage and stuff and the text in the game, but other than that, I mean, really solid. But some of those quirks are what make the game really good. Like, the game has this arcadey feel to it. You get a camera where you take pictures because you're a freelance journalist, photographer.
I've covered wars, you know.
And this camera system's really cool. It'll detect what's going on in the scene, whether it's a horror element or a graphic element or an erotica element.
Perfect.
And you get prestige points based on how good the picture is, and I really like the camera system in this, even though it's not a mandatory thing. It's really nice inclusion. You also see the photos in the loading screens, which is pretty cool, even though the loading screens are very long on a modern SSD. For the most part, all the melee weapons are satisfying to use. The guns are, the combat's a little clunky. It's that early 2000s stop in place and aim with a trigger and look around combat. It's not the best, but it works. And while all these time story elements and ways that you rank up to incentivize playing again are great things that add value to playing the game, this is where some of the ugly early 2000s gaming side effects start to rear their ugly heads and started to make the game a little unfun. First off, that starts with the survivors, which, oh my god, the AI is fucking horrible for them. So a big key element to the game is saving survivors. In between story missions and the boss battles, this is the main thing that you're doing. They cannot figure out how to navigate the geometry of the map. You will have a path that goes straight forward around the zombies, and they will choose to go directly into the crowd of zombies and start fighting. If you go up a staircase or you have to climb on a platform, they'll just stand there and stare at it and run in circles until maybe eventually they'll climb on it. And they die so easily, and the thing is, like I said, everything's timed and it's very specific, and if you mess up, you can't go back. If the survivors die, you can't save them. Once they're dead, they're gone for that playthrough. That's part of the reason I was saying you're not going to save everybody on your first playthrough. Once that specific character is dead, they're dead. Which is cool because they all have a nice personality and they all have a name to them, but God, they're so dumb. It gets to the point where this just can be infuriating. But funny enough, if you have a segment where there's somebody who's wounded that you have to carry on your shoulder or your back as you're going through the crowds of zombies, they'll seem less inclined to attack you, so it's extremely easy. But God forbid if you gotta carry through 2 or 3 people at once, man. Oh, dude, it's such a chore.
Bruh.
The cool thing is that you can give the survivors weapons and health to fend off and fight for themselves, but they're so dumb that a lot of the times it might probably just make it worse. I'll give some survivors a gun to stay strapped up, and I think they just get distracted and have a good time turning the zombies into a shooting gallery when we need to be going around the zombies to get to the safe room. Alright, here we go. Oh, fuck. I don't want anybody getting left behind, so move your ass as quick as you can. Yo, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is the first time I've gotten to shoot my line all week. I'm getting a gun. Where your bullets go? You have this walkie-talkie that Otis, the janitor, gives you as you're exploring throughout the map, and as you go on with the story, he'll call you and be like, hey, this person's locked up in a shop, you should go save him. And it don't matter what point in the fucking game you're playing, this dude's gonna call you up and ignore the shit out of you. I'll be in the middle of a boss fight, and this dude will not stop ringing my line. If I cut him off, he'll be like, yo, why are you ignoring me? That's rude. And I'm like, dude, you know that the mall's literally about to explode if I don't beat this story section, and you won't stop calling me, dude. Chill. Oh yeah, stay right there. Just like that. Otis, I'm going for an erotica. And the survivor AI becomes more of a prominent problem when it comes down to the traversal of the map, which seems to become more of a problem the longer that you play. There's one little fast travel point that will instantly deliver you from one side of the map to the other side of the map, but that's it. You'll do a lot of backtracking where you'll have to go to the far corner of the mall to save somebody or grab an item, then bring it back to the safe room, then go all the way to the far corner again to interact with another story element. You'll be going all over the place, and this is a fairly sizable mall, and you have a few things to help you, like you can grab a skateboard and skate around, but there's giant hordes of zombies in the way, and sometimes you don't want to fight those hordes of zombies. Like I said before, this goes on a day-night cycle, and that's really cool, and at night the zombies get more aggressive, which is also cool. But when you're fighting down to the last second of your time tooth and nail because you got to complete the story element, but saving the survivors been taking all your time because they're fucking retarded, it gets a little frustrating. There were so many times I had to replay the same mission or the same boss battle or something over and over over and over because I either ran out of time or somebody died that I had to save or I wanted to save. And I can imagine how that would have been an even bigger deal if you had only had one save slot. I had like 6. But I guess that's just one of the things where you have to take the good with the bad. You wouldn't want the traversal to be too easy to where it got boring to go around the map. But I definitely feel like a lot of times it just leaned over to that side where it was just a little more frustrating than fun to traverse through the map when it came to going from one corner to the other after you've already been doing it for 10 hours. In the final hours of the game, it starts to feel like there's a lot of padding. Like I said, lots of backtracking from one corner of the map to the other a couple of times. But in the final hours of the game, there's segments where you have to go and collect these items and you're going all around the entire map to collect these items. Minor spoiler here, but there's now the military involved with this whole situation and they can hit scan the fuck out of you, just accurately knock you down with their assault rifles constantly, just aim at you dead on pinpoint accurate precision no matter where you're at. And every time they capture you, they hold you captive and you gotta break free and escape this chopper, and then you go back to your main story missions and it'll spawn you in the same place no matter how inconvenient every single time that you get captured. So now you have the hit scan human AI coupled with the fact that it's taking you forever to travel everywhere, plus you have a time limit that you have to do all of this, and that's when the game is at its most frustrating, and that definitely comes into play towards the end, unfortunately.
That can't be good.
But other than that, I pretty much dig everything about the game, man. The aesthetic is great. I love that early 2000s UI, that early Capcom UI with the gradient filters over the menu elements. I didn't know what word I was trying to say. There's so many memorable story characters that you'll never forget after playing this game. Brad, Carlito, Isabella, Jesse. Even the survivors that play the most minuscule part in the game have their own personalities, looks, and names. It's like I said, it's like Yakuza with zombies meets Shenmue. What kind of fucking stupid comparison is that? The mall is just a treat to explore. It's packed with so much convincing detail. It looks great. It's fun to explore. The game's got a lot of replay value and it holds up extremely well, and if you're looking for one of those kind of difficult, really heavily narrative-driven story games with zombies, this is definitely the game to go to.
I can't wait to get my share of the take.
The interesting thing about Dead Rising is that it's kind of in a league of its own. Everything after the first Dead Rising game, like Dead Rising 2 and above, was outsourced to Capcom of Canada. Vancouver's in Canada, right? Capcom of Vancouver, another developer. So the first one was really the only true Dead Rising experience that we got. It explains why a channel like Stippo, who's dedicated their channel to Dead Rising 1 content, has been able to thrive for years now. And even like 15 years later, people are still discovering things about this game. It's actually kind of mind-blowing and interesting as hell. This game had just so much charm and character poured into it. You had this really talented developer working on a game that takes place in an entirely another country. Not that it's their first time doing this or anything. It's so unique and so enjoyable and has so much good character development in it that nothing else really compares to it. Especially not Dead Rising 4. What the fuck did they do to Frank? They brought him back and massacred my boy. The thing about Dead Rising is that it always had a serious undertone, even though it was kind of a silly game at times, because you would have a toy store you could go into and get meme weapons like a ball shooter or a toy sword. But it made sense contextually because you were in a mall. I think all of the newer Dead Rising titles just didn't get that. They did it for the LOL random elements and it didn't feel genuine. Frank himself is such a simple character with a specific mission, and you kind of get to see him grow and see the tone in his voice change as he experiences these new things, and it feels like he's a genuine character. He fits his role perfectly, and then in Dead Rising 4 they made him this cringy, selfie-taken fucking weirdo. It's truly a product of its time. I really think that that generation of games were the best. You know, it's really interesting too because a lot of early Xbox 360 titles just didn't really seem like they were that good, but this one came out the fucking gate swinging and it was fantastic. There's plenty of other zombie games out there for you to experience that are great, but they don't hit the same as Dead Rising. And if you need further proof of that, just go look at the other zombie games I've covered. Dying Light, Left 4 Dead, Dead Island. It's like every single zombie game has dead in the name of it, but none of them are a 3-day sandbox fuckfest inside of a mall like Dead Rising, and it's pretty awesome. If you played Dead Rising, I'm sure you're aware of all the little details that are in this game. Drop them in the comments if you can remember your favorite ones, because I'm sure there's ones that I haven't even seen after 30 hours of playing. It's worth your time to play Dead Rising, even if it's just once.
You've got a real knack for showing up at the right time, don't you? Have you covered wars or something?
Dead Rising 2 marked the end of the series for Capcom of Japan because this title and all of the ones following it were developed by Capcom of Vancouver, aka Blue Castle Games. Yep, this little title here is what created that studio that inevitably shut down, and knowing that information, it makes a lot more sense as to why the future titles turned out the way they did. And given that information, I honestly wasn't too excited about going into this entry. Honestly, I really didn't want to like it going into it, but we did finally play it all the way through, and well...
These voices deafening, feels like I'm running out of time. I need to drill the
Oh, Frank West was so much better. I'm sorry, who has the weapon crafting in their game here? Well, like Frank Pussy. Dead Rising 2 takes place post-events of the first game. The outbreak is spread to other parts of the country. You're taking place now in Fortune City, aka Las Vegas, and you're playing as Chuck Green, a family man who lost his wife due to the outbreak.
I guess you suck at killing zombies, otherwise she'd still be around.
During this outbreak, your daughter was also infected, and you have the job of administering her Zombrex, a drug that keeps her from turning every 24 hours during the game's cycle. You start off as a contestant to this ongoing game show that's extremely controversial. Nobody even really likes it. The contestants don't even really like it, but he's doing what he's got to do for his daughter.
It's gonna be okay now, Katie.
You start the game off in this game show, and afterwards everything goes wrong, and then you're framed for the incident that causes the current outbreak in the city.
I saw it on the TV. Saw you, buddy.
And you have, you guessed it, 3 days to solve the mystery, clear your name, and escape the city. They played it very safe when it came to Dead Rising 2. They basically lifted the entire gameplay formula and layout from the first game and pasted it into Dead Rising 2. The setup for this one's almost exactly the same. You start off, you got 3 days to survive, you gotta save as many survivors as possible while also discovering and unfolding the story that's taking place. You're meeting supporting characters, and the story develops as you go along. If something in the story goes wrong, like you didn't complete a mission or Katie doesn't get her Zombrex, the story will inevitably fail, but you'll still be able to play for the remainder of time, and this will lead to multiple endings just as it would in the first game.
Whether you're innocent or guilty.
So when it comes to the actual storyboarding of the game, it's extremely similar, and there's even this cutscene where they show how the queen in a zombie horde works, and it plays out exactly the same as the first game. You enter and exit your safe house through the vent system, like you would in the first game. The leveling system is exactly the same, so for all intents and purposes, it's almost the same gameplay, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, you know? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But right here, this is where I kind of want to taper my expectations for the game going into it, because we got to understand that these aren't the original developers of Dead Rising. They're working with an engine that they didn't create, with a story they didn't create. They're trying to figure out how all these gameplay systems and mechanics work, while also trying to develop a compelling original story that even comes close to the first one. But on paper, this one still checks all the same boxes that you would expect a Dead Rising game to do for the most part. You still have psychopath encounters that you'll meet throughout different sections of the level. These sometimes aren't necessarily essential to completing the story, but they give you big XP rewards, and you want to see the way the cutscenes play out. Fundamentally, the game is still the same, but they do try to change some things up, and that does come into play when you start the game and you enter the first section of the mall. My first impressions of Dead Rising 2 weren't very good, and I think a lot of that has to come down to me playing this one directly after I played the first game. The first game, especially after you ranked up, is really fast-paced, really arcadey. All of your movements are very, very, very snappy. There's no restriction in the movement. Everything's very fast. You can hit enemies instantly with a melee weapon. You can jump over hordes of zombies, and everything is a lot faster. In Dead Rising 2, it seems they wanted to make, I want to say, a more realistic approach to the movement.
Keep close.
Sure thing.
Move it. Faster.
All right.
In the first game, there's no hesitation from you looking from left to right or front to back, but in Dead Rising 2, they've added animations for when you're looking around, so it slows the movement up a bit, and they've slowed up some of the gameplay elements. Some of the stuff that you could just do right off of the bat either isn't there or it's pared back heavily from the first game. Like in the first game, you can jump kick zombies, and with Frank, you could just jump kick like 50 of them at a time and knock out an entire crowd out of your way. In Dead Rising 2, you can do that, but it's very gimped, and you have to rank it up more over time. time. I found in the later stages of the game, when I was ranking up more, my character became a lot quicker and the movement felt more natural, and weapons being gimped like the baseball bat were able to work more as they did in the first game. But in Dead Rising 2, it does feel like a much slower approach. And adding on to that is the actual level design, because it's quite different compared to the first game. In the first game, you're locked into this mall and everything is heavily condensed like a Yakuza title, but because of that, everything is heavily detailed. And the way Dead Rising works is in the beginning of the game, there's small hordes of zombies and smaller crowds, and as you play, those crowds get bigger and bigger and bigger and they fill the area and the game gets harder. So in the beginning stages of Dead Rising 2, there aren't a lot of zombies and there's a huge open space for you to walk around in. But in Dead Rising 2, you're not locked down to one mall. I actually believe that this is a bigger explorable environment than the first game, which is cool. There's more to look around at, but with that comes some paring back of the visual elements like within the mall. There's just not quite as much detail in the mall sections as there would be in the first game, because there's a lot more they had to produce over time. You now have multiple casinos you can go into, you have a whole strip you can go down, there's a little park area. And playing it right off of the bat and going into that first mall section after just coming off the first game, I was like, what the hell? You know, there was barely any detail and I'm thinking, wow, this is a sequel? But as you play and you explore more areas, that kind of falls to the back of your head and you don't really think about it because there's so much more to explore.
You've got some interesting skills for a reporter.
Something else new to the series is the weapon systems. Like usually you use anything in your environment to survive. You could use a dumbbell or you could use a gun. But in Dead Rising 2, they posed the question, what would happen if you put a dumbbell and a gun together? Like that, but with duct tape. They added weapon crafting in Dead Rising 2, which seemed to be a really trendy thing to do in zombie games in the late 2000s. I don't know what it was. Every game had this. Dead Island had it. You'd always have this workbench where you just tape shit together and had a melee. I don't know. Oh yeah, this is way more effective than just using the gun by itself. Now I can get the gains while I'm taking the zombies out. But the way this works is when you're exploring and you see a movie poster or something, he'll get an idea for a combo card. You'll also get these combo cards as you rank up, or maybe even after you beat a boss that has a certain weapon that you can kind of build. And these combo cards kind of look like baseball cards, and they'll show you two weapons that you can put together to make a modified weapon. At first I thought this was really fucking goofy and I didn't love the idea of it, but as I played and I used it more, it's pretty fun. I really hope that while I'm putting this together that I don't run out of time to save my fucking daughter. It's a neat way to mix up the gameplay and add a little more variety to the weapons, and I liked it. You create some cool shit. Oh yeah. This is way more effective than just using the sword by itself. And when you made these special weapons, it gave you more XP for taking out crowds of zombies. The XP being your PP, or prestige points. I don't think this game or the first game ever outright called it prestige points, but they called it PP. I don't know why they did that.
Oh, I bet you just get rock hard thinking about me at night, don't you, Chucky?
This game makes a lot of jokes that don't exactly mesh out the same way as they did in the first game. This is a Canadian studio producing a game that takes place in America, just like Capcom of Japan did with Dead Rising 1. So the humor is going to be a little bit different, the tone of the game is going to be a little bit different, and this is probably the biggest divisive element of this game. Dead Rising 1 pretty much set a standard for what you could expect from the series, and a lot of people like that quirky Japanese humor that's been crammed down and converted for an American audience. There was just a lot of subtlety and nuances in the humor that you wouldn't get from an American or Canadian studio game, and they had a different take on it.
We're wide. If we move, they'll go off.
I get explosive when I have to wait.
I'd get her what she needs, bro.
One of these big creative elements are the Psychopaths, which are also in this game, and in the first game, you really kind of connected with them in a way that you don't in the second game. At least not all of them. In the first game, a lot of the Psychopaths just felt like humans that went crazy. In the second game, they went a little more off the rails with them, and some of the Psychopaths are just downright cringy, especially the first one you meet. Like I said, the game started off slow, it wasn't a great first impression, and one of those not so great first impressions was the first Psychopath.
People not been very good to me.
And the guy voice acting this just sounds like they phoned it in, like they just picked one of the guys out of the office and said, all right, you're gonna do the voice for the Psychopath.
Nice and slow, Ted.
Ted, not slow! They all said that! Ted, not slow!
The voice acting in Dead Rising 2 is generally pretty good. I love Chuck as a character. Like Frank in the first game, he just kind of will look back on the situation like, are you seriously?
I've been waiting for you!
Who the hell would want to eat this?
He's got some pretty dumbass but witty one-liners that he says at the ends of a boss battle or mission, and in the beginning they don't really land as much, but like I said, I feel like this game ages a little bit better as you play it, and some of them were just pretty good. I grew to really like him as a character.
Yeah, you're on fire.
But if you've invested yourself into the first title and you're getting into the second one, that tonal shift is going to be extremely jarring and divisive for you.
I knew I wouldn't die, virgin.
We went off on a little bit of a tangent because I'm not scripting this shit, which I probably should be. The save system in this game works like it did the first game. If you die and you want to keep your stats, you can restart the game with your new stats, which I did one time earlier in the game, and that kind of helped me progress through a little bit. But you're probably wondering, okay, weapon crafting. What else is new in this entry? Well, like I mentioned before, one of the main gameplay changes is that you have to give Katie Zombreaks every day. The game plays out in 3-day cycles, and you have to give her Zombreaks once a day. You can either find this hidden throughout the level, or you can buy it from one of the pawn shops. I really thought in the beginning that this was going to be an extreme annoyance, but you don't really have to do it that frequently. But you'll want to have a few boxes of Zombreaks on hand because sometimes you'll come across a survivor that could use it, and it's good to have. And it also plays into the story later into the game when you're coming to a conclusion. But like I said, it can be hard to come by and expensive. Yeah, it can be expensive because the game adds an economy money system to it. You're in Vegas, you're surrounded by casinos, it makes sense that you're going to collect money.
Give us some money, Grandpa.
You can earn this money in different ways, but one of the main ones is going to be gambling and mini games. You can play slot machines, you can ride a mechanical bull, you can play this dollar grabbing tornado simulator game. Oh wow! I hope my daughter doesn't fucking die. And for me, this is a welcome addition. There's also a way you can earn money through the Terra's Reality minigame. You know that game show thing I was talking about? They made it its own separate entity for multiplayer, but I could never get into a multiplayer lobby, so I pretty much said fuck it. But yeah, you earn money in the game and you can spend that on different things, like spending it on items in the pawn shop that you'll probably not be able to get all in your first playthrough. And you'll also use this money sometimes to save survivors because for some reason they're like, hey, we want money to come with you to the safe house. And you gotta be like, all right, this makes absolutely no sense, but I'll pay to save your life, I guess. Oh, my back's against the wall. If only I could cock my gun back or reload it, but unfortunately I got this fucking dumbbell taped to it. With this being a sequel, they don't just try to add some new elements, but they do try to make some quality of life improvements in the game, and one way they do that is by fixing one of the biggest problems I had with the first game, that damn survivor AI, man. Yo, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is the first time I've gotten to shoot my load all week. I'm getting a gun. Where'd your bullets go? In the first Dead Rising, it was god-awful. It was horribly painful to get anybody from one side of the map to the other. You could have multiple survivors at one time, but just getting one across was bad, let alone 4 of them. They would constantly fall behind and get stuck on walls. They wouldn't know how to walk. They would run into zombies. You give them weapons to defend themselves and they would stay back to fight the zombies instead of try to make it to the safe house. It was incredibly frustrating. In Dead Rising 2, the AI actually kind of worked like they have half a brain.
Okay.
For the most part, they seem to keep up with you perfectly fine. They fight off zombies and they always make it to the safe house. Unless they just get completely overrun with zombies, there's little times you have to actually help them navigate. And it almost made the survivor AI useful in a way. Sometimes you might want to have 3 or 4 people in your party to help you fight your way to a mission. One way the first Dead Rising felt very antiquated was in its combat, and with the combat came the gunplay, and the gunplay was probably the most standout dated feature of the first Dead Rising. Whenever you aimed, you had to stay in place and awkwardly aim towards the enemy. Now you can actually move and shoot. This adds a little more dynamic to the gameplay. It made the boss battles feel a little more involved, and sometimes it was just downright useful and a lot more fun to use the weapons. The human AI is still pretty damn dumb, and that's compounded by the fact that you can now move and shoot. I mean, the enemy AI, you can just cheese them, man. They're dumber than the zombies. But I think that's the case for a lot of these games. Those guards have some serious weapons on them. Good thing they can't see my head clearly peeking over this box here. Bingo go bingo! The boss battles are still a little hit or miss. Like I said, when it comes down to the personality of them, some of them are just straight up cringe, but some of them are pretty entertaining, and I like them, and that does the job.
Hang on, man. We'll have an evac here in a minute.
When it comes down to the gameplay of the boss battles, they're all a little bit different and have their own unique animations and stuff, but sometimes they're either really hard or you just gotta cheese them in the right way. Sometimes I felt like I was playing an arcade game designed to steal my quarters because there were just obvious bullshit mechanics in there where the game was obviously cheesing you, but then there's other times where you hit them at just the right spot or they get stuck up on a wall or something and you can just knock them out with a couple of swipes. But it didn't really feel like it was because I was any more or less skillful. Sometimes it just felt like I got lucky. But if you do get beaten by a boss, you better hope that you have a good save done, because the save system works exactly like it did in the first game. You gotta find a restroom to take a piss and save your game. It gets incredibly fucking frustrating, don't get me wrong, but it also adds a little more risk and tension to the scenes and gives them a little bit more meaning. But other than that, it's lifted from the first game, so you better make sure you have a good save.
Show Chucky how the game is really played, boys.
Like the first game, this game has multiple endings, and I thought I was getting the good one up until the end, because there was one key thing I didn't do, which was kind of obvious that I should have done, but I really didn't want to go out of my way to do it, and I regret myself for it.
I thought for sure they'd find you lying dead with a load in your shorts.
All I'm gonna say is to make sure you got an extra Zombrex on you. I almost forgot to mention your phone messages in this game. In the first game, Otis would never stop blowing your phone up no matter at what point you were in the game, and it was so goddamn frustrating because you're sitting here in the middle of a boss battle and you're getting this urgent phone call ringing over and over and over and over. What's going on? I'm literally not gonna make it out of this scene. This is the scene that I die in. In Dead Rising 2, they kind of help alleviate this by having urgent phone calls that'll ring and bother the hell out of you if it's really important, and then they have your average save a survivor calls, which you can kind of just ignore and it won't ring constantly. That person in the maintenance room said that there was gonna be somebody on the way to save me. I hope he answered the call, even though it's been 20 minutes. I'm sure he's on the way. I'm sure he's on the way to save me, and then I'm not getting eaten and dying like a fucking zombie right now. Oh my god. I don't remember if this was a feature in the first game, but you could also go and change your ringtone in the options, or put it on vibrate, or just remove it entirely. That probably was a feature in the first game, and if I realized that it was, I definitely would have turned it on, because Otis was a pain in my damn ass. But we're not here to talk about Otis. We're done talking about Otis. We're here to talk about Chuck in a sequel, and while there were a lot of things that I appreciated that they tried to improve on, there were some things that I didn't really like about it. Obviously, one of those things is the tonal shift in this game from the previous one. They make a lot of jokes that just don't feel like they land.
You come to throw your panties at me?
They don't inject the same kind of subtle humor that was in the first game.
I am the king of cuisine!
Sometimes they just try to make the game as over the top and as loud as possible, and sometimes it just doesn't work. A lot of times that humor doesn't really seem to work, but it's not really so pronounced in this game as it is in the future entries from what I can see from the gameplay.
I've always wanted to do that.
As ridiculous as some of the weapon mods are in this game, like the beer hat, I can appreciate them because they're fun. And they add a little bit more usefulness to useless weapons like the water gun. This weapon combination might look useless, but it's getting me 100 extra PP right now. While we're on the subject of the tone of the game, I noticed something that felt a little off about playing Dead Rising 2 on my PS5. I'm playing the PS4 version, or the PS4 remaster, like I did the first game, and for the most part, it seems to run fine. Actually, that reminds me. There's a lot of crashes in this one. When I played through the first game, I don't think I had a crash once. Maybe I did like one time, maybe. But in Dead Rising 2, I had a lot of game crashes. You know, if I played this game for 20 hours, I would say I had a crash every hour of that game. It could be finishing a cutscene, or it could just be in the middle of the gameplay. There was really no telling. It wasn't a huge hindrance, and you know, sometimes crashes are just part of a game. I'm sure when they were programming Dead Rising 2, they didn't really have the same tight-knit development as the first team did, because obviously they're the ones that created it, but I do think that's worth mentioning. But also, something just felt a little weird about the color palette in Dead Rising 2, and I knew it wasn't crazy because I actually have an Xbox 360 copy right here, and I didn't play through this, but I did open it up just to take a look, and if you look at this gameplay, you can see there's just something a little different about the colors, and it changes the atmosphere just a little slightly. It felt a little darker and moodier in the Xbox 360 version than it did in the remaster. Another weird difference is that in the remaster of the first game, everything was 60 FPS, but in here, the cutscenes are 30 FPS. They still work the same way way, like if you're wearing a certain costume, it'll show up in the cutscene and everything, but for some reason, all of the cutscenes are half the frame rate, which you'll definitely notice right off of the bat. Just another weird quirk about the programming in the second game.
I suppose you know how to saw a woman in half, right, big shot?
Also, the audio mix at times isn't as good. There's definitely some jarring moments where the music will just completely stop when you walk into a certain area, or you'll be coming out of a bathroom and you'll hear like 3 different music tracks playing at once. In the first game, this is something that they definitely paid a lot of attention to detail to, and it seems like they were very careful not to make this mistake.
Shit.
But in the second game, it's also a little bit different. Like I said, they probably didn't know what they were working with, and also they tried to expand the area of the game, and you're going through these different sections, and they want to play music at different times. Sometimes I noticed some things about the audio, which is nice, like if you're walking around with a jug of orange juice, or you jump and it hits the floor, it'll slosh. But sometimes there's just a lack of ambience in the second game, because there's either no music playing, or there's too much music playing. Also, this is a really small thing, but in the first game, if you paused the game and it was playing music in the mall, it would play the same track when you paused the game. You would still hear it playing, but it would get louder, and it wouldn't sound like it was just out in the ambience. In the second game, it'll just run a random music track whenever you pause the game. Not a big deal, but it's just a different attention to detail there.
Signature is required for delivery!
Hey, buddy. I don't think there's anyone there.
Like I said before, there seems to be just a little bit less detail in certain areas of this game, like in the mall, but again, they tried to expand it a little bit, so I kind of give them a little bit of slack there. But that does at times make the game just feel a little bit less immersive.
Oh, yeah, baby!
Obviously, they tried to add new elements and build upon the first game, but also with it being a different team and them just putting new elements onto an engine and a gameplay environment that they didn't create, it's going to cause some disconnect and some problems.
Damn it! Not again!
Hey, that's not magic. She's dead.
But that also transfers over to the writing of the story and the characters. Like I said, like for the most part, I like Chuck as a character, but in the beginning, he just makes some awkward dialogue choices that doesn't really fit some of the other dialogue choices he makes.
Special delivery, signature required. I have rounds to do and I'm behind!
You do know there's a zombie outbreak going on.
And if you're a real stickler about gameplay stories and stuff, which I'm not always the best about getting into detail of, but there's some very jarring things, like why would a news station just broadcast this dude as being the guy who started an entire zombie outbreak off of one little piece of information they had? You know, this seems like life-ending, career-ending, federal charge-pending accusations that you're making about a dude just that takes place in a game show. Like, this dude's just trying to earn some money to give his daughter some zombie breaks, and now he's being framed for this massive crime because a video showed a guy in his uniform breaking a gate open that let all these zombies in.
DNA is probably all over backstage. Prints, hairs, probably some stain from where you pissed your pants before the show.
Also, late into the game, they mentioned how Isabella from the first game created the cure, but they never really explained how this cure got transferred over to a pharmaceutical company that mass-produced it and never refined it, and supposedly you still need massive amounts of queens to make this drug. And the company is having a problem with people not buying Zombrex like they used to, but then they also claim that they need a bunch of queens and they need a new outbreak to make all of this drug, but why would you need to make all of this drug if less people were buying it and there was less of a demand for it? Wouldn't you just try to move on to a different type of drug or use this break to develop a cure that didn't rely on the queens? And that's ignoring all of the people that would still need the drug because they're dependent on it like it's insulin. Maybe I'm just looking too deep into this one here. I guess it is just a video game story. I don't know. I'm not like a film critic or anything that really analyzes the details and looks into this type of stuff, but if I can see this, it's kind of like, yeah, this is a little obvious, isn't it?
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait! I can't wait! Cut to the end, Dad! Cut to the end!
Dead Rising 2's kind of got a banger-ass soundtrack. I like it. It might not be as good as the first game, I don't know, but it's still got some good stuff on it. They reused some of the mall music from the first game and put it into the second one, which felt a little out of place for me coming from the first game, but I don't know. Maybe it was budget or time constraints or laziness. I don't know. There's There's a lot of sexual tension in the game, and Rebecca Chang is a baddie. Unfortunately, there's no sex option in the game, which is a little disappointing.
I guess they just didn't want it bad enough.
Ultimately, it's kind of hard for me to hold Dead Rising 2 at the same standard as the first game. You gotta keep in mind it was a whole new team taking it on. They don't understand the full nuances of the first game, and they don't have the same development staff or talent that created the first game. But given what they were working with, I think they made a pretty decent game. I like their take on the series in some aspects. I like Chuck Green as a character. I think he's really cool. And I think the gameplay elements that they added to the game are beneficial, like the weapon crafting. I can't reach the trigger! This modification's useless! And I'm not going to try to judge it too much on its faults. What I will judge it on, though, is the DLC. And I'm not talking about the prequel DLC. There was this really cool prequel for the game that showed you the events before the events that start the game. I think it was like a couple hours long, but it was an Xbox Live Arcade exclusive, and it kind of worked as a demo for the game. Apparently that's really cool, but I don't have that on the triple pack, so I didn't really get to give that a shot. Oh, but what I did have the pleasure of playing was Dead Rising 2 Off the Record. And if you happen to play this before you play Dead Rising 2, or God help you, before the first game, oh, I'm so sorry for you.
That's a real good way to get yourself killed, son.
Hey, I just like crawling around in vents.
I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think Dead Rising 2 is a worthy entry to the series, all things considered. There's a lot of things that it doesn't do as well as the first game, but there's some things it does better than the first game. One of those things that it doesn't do better is Frank West.
I wouldn't underestimate Frank West, sweetheart.
So Dead Rising 2 Off the Record. This is a spin-off built onto Dead Rising 2, and it was released as its own standalone thing, I believe about a year after Dead Rising 2. This is an alternate telling of Dead Rising 2. Off the Record positions itself as the what-if scenario. What if instead of Chuck West being the main character of this outbreak situation, it was Frank West? What if Frank West was the one that ended up in the game show? What if he ended up in this outbreak situation and the story played out differently?
Look, I don't know what's going on here, but clearly things are not as they seem.
I love this idea. I love the idea of taking a different character and remixing it to work and play in a different way. When you're playing Off the Record, they take some of the same cutscenes and some of the same dialogue with the new character Frank, and it'll play out in the same way, but also they remix it and they add new cutscenes in the beginning and the ending of some of these, and they switch around the story elements, so instead of Chuck causing the outbreak, it's actually one of the members of your group that causes the outbreak. And now instead of you clearing your own name, you're trying to clear somebody else's name, and you're developing the story to clear the name. Instead of you giving Zombrex to your daughter Katie, you're the one taking the Zombrex as Frank. This is another thing that kind of raised the question, what happened to Isabella? Why is she not a part of this? Why wasn't her cure developed? Why the fuck is he taking Zombrex and not, like, why? You know, it's just kind of like, what's going on there? The concept of
Off the Record
wasn't bad. I want more Frank. I want to see what Frank would do in this situation. I want to see WWFD. What would Frank do?
Wow, that was fucking stupid.
What would the reporter Frank do when he interacts with the other reporter, Rebecca Chang? That could be a cool dynamic, right?
Not so fast. You gotta throw the old dog a bone before he does any tricks.
Unfortunately, K0 is where all of the shortcomings of this studio become incredibly obvious. In Dead Rising 2, they were working with a clean slate, a new story, new characters, but in Off the Record, they're trying to be Frank. And I'm sorry, Blue Castle, but you can't f***ing be Frank. To be frank, this is why your studio closed down.
I'm sorry, Vancouver, that was really insensitive, and I hope you all found successful careers.
First off, Frank was this very subtle, reserved character who was just trying to be a professional in his element. He was never an arrogant asshole who liked to boast or show off. This is a psychopath that he actively went against as his rival in the first game.
Now this is my sexiest shot.
But in the second game, they set up this idea that he succeeded his mission, he got books written, and he got to tell his story, and all of the fame and success went to his head. And now this is the opportunity for him to become level-headed again. This new situation that he finds himself in is an opportunity for him to kind of humble himself and find new beginnings and bring back his original reputation. But the fucking game never does that.
I've got, a little experience rounding up survivors.
They just double down on him being an arrogant asshole. They start off the game by showing him and he looks buff as hell, like he's been taking steroids. And oh my god, it's so cringeworthy. Almost everything Frank says is so damn cringeworthy, I can't stand it. He always refers to himself in the second person or third person.
I wouldn't underestimate Frank West, sweetheart.
Frank West never refers to himself as Frank West. You know, this could have worked. This could have been a cool ass double scenario, and I think they brought the original Frank back for the voice acting, which is cool. The voice acting's good, but it's not Frank. All they had to do was tone it down a few notches and this would have been great. Like, it's so extra for no reason.
I think deep down, I knew I hadn't uncovered what was really going on.
Now, instead of just subtle hums whenever he's putting on clothes, now he's calling himself a ladies' man, and it's almost as cringe as my green screen skits.
Ladies' man, coming through. Hey there, handsome. Handsome devil.
I also noticed in the first game, Chuck is always referred to as an old man, and I think Chuck is like 29, but Frank is in his 50s, so he's definitely more akin to being an old man.
You must have to take pills for that at your age.
So I think they always kind of had this setup planned from the beginning. And if they had all of that time to flesh it out, why not try to make him more of what he was?
Hey, I just like crawling around in vents.
None of his humor lands. All of his re-recorded lines from what Chuck said almost seems like he doesn't do them as good as Chuck because it just doesn't feel like it fits, because it's not some shit Frank would say.
What is it with me and vents?
They just try to make him into this badass character that he really didn't have to be. He was a badass without being a badass. He didn't need to tell everybody that he was a badass to be a badass.
If you want an autograph, just ask.
They brought back the camera system from the first game and somehow they managed to make that worse too. It used to be really quick and snappy and it had this arcadey feel to it, and now it's like you gotta push one button to aim, then you gotta push another button to pull the camera out, and then it slowly progresses everything in the scene, and it's just not very satisfying. It's just not as pretty to look at, it's slower to interact with, and you just kind of wonder, am I doing this because it's fun, or am I doing this because they felt the need to implement it because it was Frank?
You can't keep Frank West bottled up.
Like I said, all of this would have worked out a little better if they had just played a little bit more to their strengths and not tried to reinvent the wheel. Like, you can do that all day with your original characters, but when you try to do that with somebody that's already established, it obviously doesn't feel right. I didn't even realize this was the thing at all. I knew about Dead Rising 4 and them bringing Frank back, but I didn't realize they tried to bring Frank back this early into the game. I was kind of excited when I started up Off the Record and I saw one of the Psychopaths from the second game making an appearance this early into it, and I'm like, okay, this story's gonna be a little bit different. I like what they're doing here. But I couldn't deal with more of an hour of this cringe fest from Frank, man, and I hate it because I would love to see how he interacts with all the other characters and how this plays out, but I don't know that I want to sit through it, dude.
Okay, maybe I'll let you tag along for a while.
That's more like it.
Another weird element to Off the Record is that now whenever you gotta go save a survivor and they give you the text of where they're at or what they're doing, that's actually voice acted now. But also they made the weird decision of adding fucking checkpoints to this, so now the element of like risk isn't there. You know, like when I was saying earlier that I'm glad they left the save system alone and it just worked how it worked in the original game. Now they felt the need to add a checkpoint system so you're always safe. I suspect that the reason they did this was either as a quality of life improvement, or they did it because they didn't want people who played the second game already to have to save scum their way through it or constantly replay things that they really didn't want to. They probably wanted to make it a little easier for them. But that's fundamentally a part of the game design in Dead Rising, and that kind of ruins it a little bit.
Son of a bitch!
There's some other new weapon elements and stuff that they add into Case Zero that would have been fun to experiment with, but I don't know that I want to sit through, dude. If you guys really want me to play through Off the Record and make a whole ass video of it, alright, you can leave it in the comments. If enough people want me to do it, then I'll do it, but I don't think anybody really wants to see this. Please don't make me do that. I don't want to play through
Off the Record.
I don't even want to play through 3 or 4. Especially not 4.
I was just looking for the men's room. Story of my life.
But yeah, Off the Record. And Dead Rising 2 is an interesting turning point in Dead Rising's history, for the better or for the worst, and that's my opinion on it. I have a feeling that Dead Rising 2 was a lot of people's first Dead Rising game, so if that's the case for you or you have a different experience with it, tell me in the comments.
Thanks for the ride.
Army of Two today.
Army of Two.
Wow, Army of Two looks like such a cool game. Somebody should do a video on that game. Wow, I wonder who it is. Let me go check. Wow, a zombie game. I should do a zombie game video. This was actually a video I was planning on doing last year, but ultimately I decided to scrap the whole thing. But before we get into what I think of Dying Light, I'm going to give you guys my initial impressions from the game, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Is he still here? Bro, what are you doing?
Hey, bro, I'm just a zombie. Have you played Dying Light?
The story starts off pretty simple. You play as Crane, a member of the GRE, aka Who Gives a Shit Predatory Military Relief Task Force, given the job of getting the virus cure information from Who Gives a Fuck Bad Guy Enemy Boss. You then drop into the slums of Haran, not exactly the most interesting location I've seen to start a game off in, and immediately things go bad because of course they do. You then get saved while you're just on the brink of death, how convenient, and the people that save you lead you right into the main plot, all the while everyone's barely asking any questions about any of this.
You've got some serious natural talent, man. Either that, or you've done this before. You done this before?
Hardly. The closest I ever came to this was running track in high school.
Well, then you're a fucking prodigy.
The main leader of the group comes off as an annoying brat, and you come off as a complete asshole snitch. During the beginning of the game, you're feeding personal information to the GRE about people that just saved your life.
They've got him set up in a sort of research trailer, and he's working on a cure for the virus. His name is Zara.
He also has a wife, 3 kids that can play a mean harmonica. His wife's name is Cheryl, and she loves to cook, but sometimes when she makes dinner, she has to be careful with the seasoning. Yeah, they say it's not really a big deal, but whenever she makes something a little too spicy, it upsets his tummy.
Maintain your cover and secure all of his research.
And there's even a mission where you burn a case of antizin, life-saving medication, because you were ordered to do so over the radio. Antizin is a medication that prevents a person that's infected from turning. You completely understand this, given the fact that you're infected yourself.
But there are civilians depending on this stuff.
But fuck it! As you can tell, up to this point, I wasn't really feeling the story or atmosphere, and about after 20 hours of Dead Island, I wasn't in love with the initial gameplay. The reason for this is likely because Dead Island is the foundation that Dying Light was built on. While these games are significantly different tonally and in scope, the Dead Island DNA is almost immediately recognizable.
Bruh.
Albeit vastly improved since its last release. The melee combat is almost exactly the same, weapons degrade and can be repaired, you can mod them with new abilities based on the loot and blueprints that you find sound familiar.
That's called motherfucking bars, nigga!
And there's skill trees that grant you new abilities as you play. A lot of these abilities, like throwing melee weapons or finishing a stomp on a downed enemy, originally took place in Dead Island. There's even the same ridiculously overpowered kick function. However, there's something special about Dying Light that immediately takes your focus from all of that Dead Island stuff and starts having you think about Mirror's Edge, the parkour.
Raheem!
My leg!
Bruh.
Jesus, don't move! I'll get help!
Ha! I was just fucking with you.
Son of a bitch!
The team on Dying Light clearly put a lot of work into the movement system, and it shows. It's a big focus of Dying Light, and the game just wouldn't feel right without it. You can quickly avoid massive crowds of infected by performing expertly timed parkour jumps across buildings and vehicles. You can scale buildings and towers by jumping up ledges and makeshift platforms. I almost always felt confident about timing my jumps and knowing what objects I could grab. You can break your fall by landing on garbage, cars, or rolling on a fall when the upgrade was available, all with the exaggerated swagger of a military man that knows a little bit of parkour from a private military company training program. There were so many times I avoided these close calls with infected by outrunning them or diving into a pool of water. The movement felt non-intrusive, liberating, and was such a treat to play. It was exactly what you would want parkour movement to feel like in a game like this. I absolutely adored the unique gameplay and art style of Mirror's Edge, so getting to relive a bit of that experience in a tense, dark, and cluttered environment felt great. Another noteworthy feature of Dying Light is the day-night system, kinda hence the name Dying Light. It's easy to feel confident about striding your way through the world during the day, cleaning out safe houses to have an easy place to camp around and loot the buildings where everything is easily visible. Also, there's this neat Skyrim lockpicking system when you're looting stuff, so that works pretty good, obviously. But during the night, it's a completely different ballgame. Everything is dark, like incredibly dark. The only reliable light source you have to see a glimpse of anything is your flashlight. Zombies are now a bit more complicated to avoid, but that's not all. At night you run past volatiles, extremely fast and relentless infected that are typically faster and more powerful than you. And my experience fighting them was near impossible, so if my running wasn't good, I was done for. You know a game is good when you get that in the zone feeling, you know the one I'm talking about, where you completely forget about everything around you and time just kind of seems like it melts away. A game can usually do that for me a few ways, one being the gameplay. I'd probably spend at least a third of my life playing Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, but a game can also achieve this with its story. It doesn't always have to be the best written or thought-provoking, but it has to be fun and keep me engaged. Dying Light really didn't hook me at first with its story, obviously, but it definitely grew on me as I played. Kind of the same way your character does as you progress, choosing his moral compass over his job that he's initially given.
You don't belong here. This is just a job for you.
No, not anymore, it's not. I'll be in touch when I've decided what to do next.
I started to find myself attached to the characters as I watched them interact with each other, show empathy for things that were... Okay, that sounds like I'm reading a fucking script. We're not gonna say it like that. I started to feel myself attached to these characters as I watched them interact with each other, show empathy for the things that were lost, or with the happiness for the things that were accomplished. It's really easy for games to push this emotion onto the player, but Dying Light gave me this feeling organically with the time that I invested. I think all of the performances that are given in Dying Light, especially the one by Roger Craig Smith, your character Crane, delivers this feeling excellently.
Listen, I'm gonna talk to Rice myself.
Whoa, hang on a minute. Reckon these people still need you. Okay, just give me some time, all right? There's gotta be another way. A better way.
Fine. I'll wait. But not for long.
With the exception of some repetitive lines from the enemy AI, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
We love the movies from your country.
I always hear people using the phrase, "it gets better as you play." Is this fucking thing on? I always hear people using the phrase, "it gets better as you play," but I feel like Dying Light definitely fits that description well. You start off slow and weak. Your character is faced with three sides of a conflict, and he kind of has to learn which path he wants to take.
The story's still linear, though.
As you upgrade your skill trees, you really get the feeling that you're getting stronger as a player. Instead of just plain stat boost or percentage upgrades in the skill tree like some other games I've played, you get meaningful new abilities that help you based on your playstyle. This game is easy enough to finish without unlocking everything. Hell, I didn't get the grappling hook until the very last mission since I was mostly just mainlining the story, but if you choose to complete the side content and spend time grinding, you're definitely rewarded for it. Melee combat with the same generic enemy type started off boring, but when I started to deal some real damage with sharper or stronger weapons, it got more interesting. You also run into new special infected types as you play through the game, and those enemies get peppered into the world as you go along. Little strange, but I guess that's how they wanted to do it. I didn't do many weapon upgrades, but I could definitely tell a difference from the vanilla ones that I used. Also, it was nice to have the ability to repair the weapon so I could continue to use the ones that I enjoyed. One bonus point I gotta give this game is that it never really felt like it was too complicated or too unobtrusive to repair the weapons. I always had enough metal parts or enough materials to fix what I needed to. So that mechanic never really got annoying. However, I'd be lying if I said the health mechanic wasn't a little bit annoying. You see, when your health gets low, though it'll regenerate just enough to keep you going, but if you want to have full health, you will either need to die and reset completely or constantly find med kits. I really found this concept to be just a little bit annoying. It kind of felt like they were shoveling in this survival element that the game just really didn't need, in my opinion. But hey man, that's just my opinion. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the second city. This is a little bit of a spoiler, oopsie, but one thing I was happily ignorant to before playing is that about halfway through the game you get an entirely new area to explore. And just like the first area, you can just kind of organically free run through this entire thing and it feels smooth and seamless. It never feels like the area was kind of made for this. It just kind of works. Outside of, you know, the obvious scaffolding that's made for runners that kind of looks like it would naturally have been placed there during the game's life. This city was fun, had a ton of verticality, and was beautifully detailed. It's a complete 180 from the drab slums that you're first presented with, and it's a welcome way to freshen up the game.
Mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia.
Even though Dying Light is a zombie game, it feels more like an open world action adventure game, and they're very good about playing that to their strength and keeping the gameplay interesting. Even though the game starts out with these fetch quests, it's not afraid to put you in new locations and have you doing things in a way you weren't expecting. Most notably is when they do things like cram you into an area like a school or an apartment complex, and the game quickly turns from this free-moving open world game into this more linear feeling horror game where you don't have the ability to just easily escape a situation if you don't want to fight. You have to actually face these enemies head on. I think it's kind of funny how I found myself cautiously and slowly peeking around each corner, kind of afraid of what I was going to run into next. Kind of funny considering right before this I was able to just freely move wherever I want and avoid conflict if at all possible. I no longer had that luxury. The only way to finish the objective was to get through this building. And to get through this building, I had to fight whatever came at me. That, as well as some more cinematic type of set piece elements that you'll run into as you play through the story, were ways that they were able to really keep it fresh in a way that made me never really get bored of it. One thing that I feel didn't get much of an improvement from its predecessor was gun combat. It wasn't really fun and felt really awkward, especially on a controller clicking the analog to aim down sights. This was especially weird considering you could just aim down sights with your right mouse button when playing on a keyboard and mouse just like you'd do any other shooter. However, using a gun felt very overpowered. It felt like many enemies didn't take more than 3 bullets to down. I kind of feel like this was intentional because they kind of knew the gun combat wasn't really that fun, so maybe as a little bit of a countermeasure, they just made them stupid powerful. Headshots gave you this nice watermelon explosion effect though, so that was pretty cool, I guess. I also kind of felt like a lot of the weapons in this game were underused. I didn't use a pistol once in this game. I never picked one up, and I never felt the need to buy one, because you just kind of get an assault rifle under your first gun shooting mission. I also bought a bow pretty late into the game, which felt really useless compared to just using a gun. I think you may have been able to modify arrows, but what's the point when I could just use an AR to clear out an entire room with one magazine? Another thing that I felt undercooked was the enemy AI. A lot of the zombie types were pretty good. You had the dumb walkers. The faster runners that would chase you down, as well as all of the special infected. But the human AI was definitely the worst of the bunch. They easily got confused and would refuse to chase you if you were on any kind of elevation at all. They just attack you with a random throwing object if they couldn't reach you, spouting the same one-liners.
I'm not done with you! This is it for you! This is it for you! Yeah, you fucked up! Come on! Don't give up now! Come on! Don't give up now! I'm right here! Let's do this!
These one-liners were all repeated by the same single voice actor, and all of the characters kind of performed actions in the exact same way. The combat just kind of turned into spamming them until you eventually hit them when they weren't blocking. They awkwardly reacted to being around other infected during combat, or if you used anything besides a melee weapon, and for some reason a lot of the times I felt like you just couldn't get a good connection with hitting them with a melee weapon. It was hard to feel like you got a satisfying hit with a melee weapon because they wouldn't so much as flinch when you would hit them with it. They also kind of all look the same with no personality. Eh. I can't end this video without talking about the final boss battle of this game. I think it's fair to say that when a game... Oh, my mouth is a little... Oh, it's a little wet. I think it's fair to say that when a game spends its time building you up to be the strongest, most badass version of your character that you can be, it'll close the book by giving you a final test of strength. Something that takes everything that you've learned, everything that you've been working for, and put it all on the line for one monumental final battle. Well, this finale starts off that way. You get a pretty challenging running segment where you're working your way up, scaling massive half-built skyscrapers and construction cranes to have a rooftop face-off with the final boss. This makes a lot of sense because running is such a big part of the game. It's a really fun build-up to the final boss battle. You've done a few boss battles prior to this, so I thought I had a good idea of what to expect from this final boss battle. However, when I finally made my journey to the top and I began to fight, I realized that this was just a glorified quick time event. Is this fucking Shenmue? Come on, This was extremely disappointing. I understand why they wanted to have this moment. They wanted to portray these detailed animations and talking point in a specific way, and to its credit, that was done very well. However, I feel like all of the time I put into this game was just for a basic QTE that had nothing to do with the rest of the gameplay. Because see, if I was able to get to this point with no upgrades or weapons, it wouldn't even matter. No other boss battle was a quick time event, so it was a little disappointing to me that during the most important, emotionally fueled boss battle, all I had to do was take this guy out by pushing WASD. That kind of sucked. All of my criticism aside, Dying Light was a roller coaster of an experience. It started out slow and unassuming, but I eventually found myself hooked to the gameplay loop that I was thrown into. It's just a shame that that final drop at the end of the roller coaster was just more of a small slope for me. After playing Dying Light, I feel like I have a good idea as to why Dead Island 2 didn't happen. This game is basically Dead Island 2. Well, spiritual successor, but yeah. It's far superior mechanically to anything that was being produced by Jaeger at the time, and during the development hell of Dead Island 2, Techland and WB released this really fun experience.
Look at me, cannibal, trying to eat. I got a zombie on me, and you can't harm me.
Hey, watch it.
You voodoo, bitch.
Dude, this song bangs way more than it has any right banging. Dead Island is basically Borderlands if Borderlands was a zombie game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Dead Island came out at a time where there was just this zombie craze going on. You had everything from TV shows, movies, video games, anything that had to do with entertainment, there was a zombie thing for it. If you had never played or heard of the game itself, you probably played or heard of the trailer. Played the trailer? I don't make... Whatever. It was this really interesting piece where these events of a family falling apart was playing in reverse, and there was these video breakdowns where people put it in chronological order. It was a really good marketing technique, so A+ on that. However, it wasn't really indicative of the game's actual story. We'll get into that a little bit later. Dead Island is basically a first-person shooter slash hack and slash with light RPG elements. It's kind of like a semi-open world game that takes place across 4 different hub areas, starting in a resort. Lots of variety, which is pretty awesome, but the sewer levels. Developers, sewer levels aren't fun. It's like they're sitting here making this game on a beautiful tropical paradise island that's going to hell, and they say to themselves, you know what would look really cool and be really fun to play in? A sewer. These long, narrow hallways where you gotta backtrack and spend a ton of time in these environments that don't give a lot of gameplay variety and look exactly the same are not fun. It's all about the gameplay loop, and your whole goal in the game is to go through the story and escape the island while saving as many people as you can. We're taking a modern look on Dead Island, seeing how it holds up, how it plays, and whether you should give it a shot.
Time to die, mate.
But before we get into any of that, we gotta talk about the version we're playing on, just like the Splinter Cell version. This is the PC version, and it's also the definitive edition. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we talk about this video. First off, performance isn't as rock solid as I'd like it to be. I remember back in the day, this was plagued with performance issues and optimization issues. I think there was even an issue at launch where people were getting the Xbox gamepad as a default, not the keyboard and mouse icons, and they had to go into the configuration file to change it or something. We don't necessarily have that problem, but my computer shouldn't be dropping frames like it was. It's not really bad, but I've been playing this maxed out at 144 frames, and there's times, especially in the later stages, where it'll just drop down to like a cool 60, or even when it's in the lower hundreds, it feels like it's at 30, and that started to get really distracting. Also, this game was obviously made to play with a controller. The menus are really clunky to try to navigate when it comes to like managing your inventory. After about 10 hours of playing, I still never got used to it. It still feels pretty awkward. And the driving, man. The driving is already bad with a keyboard and mouse in any game, but in this one, it just doesn't feel great.
Hurry it up. These fuckers are starting.
And there were times where I would try to turn, and it just wouldn't recognize me turning, and I would just plow straight into a wall. But we'll get into that a little bit more into the gameplay. Just wanted to mention that. So, let's talk about the gameplay, I guess.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. What the fuck? I'm not even supposed to be here. I hope I don't jack off. Okay. This guy's about to jack off. This little fucking butt's a piece of shit.
Obviously, the big focus on this game's gameplay is the melee combat, and you'll be using anything from kayak paddles to hammers to take people out. The gunplay isn't really good. Alright, if this game had a $10 budget, 50 cents of it went into the gunplay because the guns are not fun to use. They feel really clunky, the aim down sight's really weird, and whenever you're aiming at somebody and shooting them, it's really hard to keep an aim on them. The only time it's kind of fun is when you have a really powerful gun that takes them out like within one shot, and even then it's just not great. Obviously the melee combat is where it's at. When it comes to the melee combat, you can break and sever limbs, which will change the way the zombies react to you. You have a fury, like a rage mode, where you can just kind of one-shot them, which works pretty cool. And as you upgrade your skill tree, you'll access new abilities to take them out. Also, none of these characters skip leg day.
Bastard!
You get a knockback feature where you can just kick the shit out of these zombies, and
What you say?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
any common infected can be knocked down as long as you're jump kicking, which will allow you to insta-kill with an ability you eventually get by upgrading. The biggest gimmick of this gameplay is the weapon mods. Throughout the game you'll find these blueprints where you can craft and upgrade your melee weapons or even your guns. Yeah, you just take a couple of batteries and a little bit of duct tape and boom, you got a taser on your machete. Why not? You can make incendiary rounds, you can make shock rounds, and just the creativity on this is really crazy. This is easily the best part of the game, although be warned, if you play it like me and you're just going through the story without doing a lot of side quests or a lot of looting, which is obviously a big part of this game, you won't get the necessary components you need to craft these blueprint mods. I was only able to do a handful of them throughout my experience, and there's a lot of blueprint mods. There's even some hidden developer ones, which are just kind of special things you can find if you put in the effort. I really love when developers do this in games. It's just a hidden little bonus that makes the exploration and gameplay worth your time. It's awesome. In a game like this, the gameplay loop is where it's most important because they expect you to play this game and do a lot of killing, a lot of looting, and they expect you to play this multiple times throughout the different characters that have their own special abilities. So it's very important that they get the gameplay right. And I think the melee combat is very good. Like I said, the gunplay, not so good. I'm glad that it's in there. I just wish they would have put a little more effort into it. There's a lot of these shooting gallery sections where they expect you to have these gunfights, and it's just not so great. I'd make any effort I could to just try to use the melee weapons. And when it comes to the AI, they're dumb as a box of rocks, dude.
Help! Okay, help me, God! You...
The zombies are really easy to trick. You can get up on a platform and stay out of their way. You can hide behind a railing or a wall and make their path reset. And the human AI, ooh, the humans, they're so stupid. Like the zombies, they're zombies. You expect them to be kind of brainless, whatever. But when it comes to the human AI, sometimes they just outright don't see you. They hide in plain sight. They're pretty easy to breeze through. There is a slight glitchiness to the gameplay sometimes. The game almost feels like it missed a couple of patches.
Figures. It
wasn't Russian.
Like I said, this is supposed to be the definitive version, but there were times where I'd get knocked down and glitch through a wall, or I would just get stuck on random objects and have to reset.
The dream time.
The checkpoint system could work a little awkwardly. There were multiple times where I'd just finish an objective before I was really intended to in the game because the AI is slow as hell. Like in this instance where I'm intended to run into this guy fighting a crowd of zombies, but I actually ran past that entire section and was just chilling with him on the boat beforehand.
At the altar. Is that your friend?
That was fucking voodoo, not a living dead shit.
The gameplay might be a little glitchy sometimes, but hey, can't hold a candle to Bethesda.
She needs painkillers.
Hi.
She won't make it without the medicine, mate. Please.
The gameplay mission variety really just kind of ranges from your standard fetch quest to your escort missions. Don't expect a ton of variety here or nothing that really reinvents the wheel. It's the pretty standard go collect some gas cans or go collect this document and bring it back to me, whatever. Luckily, there's not a whole lot of these escort missions because, like I said, the AI is dumb as a box of rocks, and that also transfers into your teammates. The escort missions are just kind of hilariously bad sometimes. Everybody kind of runs like they gotta take a shit. You're significantly faster than everybody else. For some reason, everybody just loves to take their sweet ass times when it comes to getting from objective to objective. Also, talking about this is making my mouth really dry. Luckily, the gameplay is fun because the story leaves a lot to be desired.
I'm not gonna make it. Can you do something for me? Can you give this to my family? I didn't have a will, so I wrote it on the back of this.
I cannot help you.
First off, you'll notice that you're basically playing the game by yourself, and most likely you're not going to be playing with other people unless you have friends to play this with. I had 2 people join my online games, and both times they were hacking in the beginning stages.
New challenger.
Bruh.
Voodoo.
And this was only on the first stage. This didn't transfer throughout any of the other part of the game. In the cutscenes, you'll always see your 3 AI teammates with you, but when it comes down to the actual gameplay, you're just by yourself, unless it comes down to an escort mission. Otherwise, the other characters in the game are just sitting at the home base in whatever hub area you're at. But the main problem with the story is there's no actual interaction within these 4 characters that you would be playing as with other teammates until like halfway through the game.
Holy shit!
It's like they didn't have the budget for the voice acting or something, because I almost didn't think these characters talked to each other until just randomly sometime in the city they started interacting.
I'm saying that we have to find that guy on the radio.
And the lifeguard? We promised to help.
Oh, fuck the lifeguard, man. If not for him, we wouldn't be stuck here like this.
Make the call.
And then completely out of nowhere, they throw this side character at you that you're supposed to all of a sudden care about, and they give her more character development than any of the main characters in the game. I'm sorry, excuse me? I'm just all of a sudden supposed to care about this girl leaving her dad? I don't care, dude. And she's a brat. I'm so glad that something mildly inconvenient happens to her in this game. Totally not talking about her dying or anything.
Go on now, and don't you lose hope. Live your life. I love you.
Dude, you can put all the sad music in the background and record this thing in a tunnel or something if you want to, but it doesn't change the fact that I don't give a shit.
What the fuck?
Before that, they were just kind of awkwardly huddled around each other. There's not a whole lot of character development in the beginning besides this intro screen before you actually start the game.
You know who I am. You have any idea who you're fucking talking to? Or maybe you saw me in the playoffs. I played for the fucking goddamn champions.
Oh, the fucking goddamn champions. That's my favorite team. It's so stupid, dude, but I just love the quirkiness of this game. You don't really know how these characters met up with each other or what their relationship is or what they think of each other. There's not a whole lot of character building there, which is kind of disappointing. They give you this diverse group of people, but yet there's just not a whole lot going on between them, other than the occasional "Oh, we gotta all get out of here." The voice acting's alright, but you just only get it sparingly. I'm just gonna throw out this little alternate scenario here. If the Dead Island 2 boys are listening to this and they're actually still working on that game, you guys can have this as a freebie from me. I'm just throwing it out there. I came up with it in 5 minutes. You don't have to hire me as a writer or anything. Instead of each character's prologue starting the exact same way, what if they all had their own individual stories? Like the little Asian lady I'm playing as is supposedly like a desk clerk or something, so it really doesn't make sense that she's waking up in the same hotel room as everybody else. What if she started out on a little shack outside the island or something and she was about to start her day for work? Maybe Sam B had like a little VIP area he was crashing in the night before. Maybe Football Jock homie woke up in the bushes hungover or something. The other girl who's a firearms expert, maybe she was running security for the island or something. And then after each prologue plays out individually, they all intersect and come together in the first chapter where you start the game. This would not only add more replay value and gameplay variety in the beginning, but it would also add to the story and the world building. But now let's just have them all wake up in the same hotel room. Maybe it was a budget thing, I don't know. I just think that would have been a cool little hypothetical scenario. That being said, the story that is there it's kind of mediocre. Spoiler, the first guy that interacts with you about getting off the island is kind of the bad guy. Oh, the creepy guy sitting in front of all the computer monitors is the bad guy, who would have thought? The biggest character arc that you really get in the game is this girl that you save before you move on to the city area. And she's alright, but you very quickly hate her in the beginning stages of the game because she basically runs off without you. She ends up just getting herself kidnapped and raped and slowing your progression down. Thanks, girl. She also kind of acts as your storage box throughout the game, which is it's kind of weird, but I mean, alright, I'll take it. Overall, I think Dead Island's pretty fun. It was a pretty cool game, a cool 10 hours spent just on the main story without really doing any of the side stuff. I might go into a new game plus with all of my abilities and maybe try to complete more of it. Who knows? I might. Maybe I won't. You won't know because I might not do a video on it, so there you go.
Oh, great. We're on an island again. And we got more zombies. Oh, zombie game? Yeah, sure. I'd love to play a zombie game, but while we're giving things away, since you're a zombie, I got something for you too. Hey guys, I got a little sidetracked on the way home and had something I had to leave in my shower tub. We're talking about Dead Island Riptide today.
Your crew won't be making movies anymore. They're dead.
Fuck.
So Dead Island Riptide was one that I just really didn't get into after the first game. I just kind of sat silent for a while waiting on Dead Island 2, and with the recent announcement of it coming out, I figured, why not play Riptide? Dead Island Riptide is basically like Dead Island 1.5. It's not quite a sequel, but it's got more content than, say, your normal expansion would have. Riptide takes place directly after the events of the first game, and if you haven't played them, you don't need to worry because they'll summarize everything for you in a quick flashback sequence.
The army tried to contain the infection, but they were bloody useless.
You're getting off of the chopper that you escaped from the end of the first game, and then the military immediately handcuffs you and everything goes wrong. A new outbreak starts upon the ship. This is where you'll meet John, another immune character, and then the ship crashes. You wake up on the island. You meet Harlow, another immune character. Dead Island Riptide starts.
But it's really not safe here on the beach.
On the first game, you were very much immune to the virus, and in Riptide, they put an emphasis on the immunity of your characters and what long-term effects could happen as a result of you being immune. Will you get some kind of special powers from it? Will you eventually turn as a result of having this temporary immunity? Is there a cure? Is there some way to transfer this? And this, along with you just leading the other survivors you meet to safety, is the driving vehicle for the storyline.
You'll find other survivors there. Take this. In the meantime, I'll see if anyone else washed up on the beach.
While you're on that cargo ship, you pretty much also meet the villain of the game, Serpo, this corporate guy who's kind of running and pulling the strings behind the scenes. You're gonna do what I say and you're not gonna report this to your boss because I'm the one that's paying your boss's bills. That kind of story. Riptide won't be winning any awards for its storytelling, but the real star of the show is going to be the island that you're on.
Jumping into Riptide, and also one of the reasons I didn't really play Riptide to begin with in the beginning was that I was afraid it would just be a boring environment. Like, how do you top the original setting of the first game? The whole selling point is this resort. And while I do think it's really hard to top that resort setting, I think I underestimated Riptide because the environment's actually pretty cool. Oh, that zombie just threw a sword at me! You got this beautiful island with mountains, waterfalls, and connecting hub areas where you'll go from point to point moving your survivor group. You'll find yourself interacting with locals that have basically just been trying to make do since this whole outbreak thing happened, and some of them have a real disdain for people coming to the island, bringing this plague with them.
All you immunes are getting a little crazy.
How? What the hell are you saying?
You don't trust us now? Well, maybe. We don't fucking trust you.
Riptide takes place in 2 locations, one being this island with its own little areas in it, like the village of Halai, the dogs, the jungle. And then you also have the city of Jefferson, which in my opinion is leaps and bounds better than the first city in the original Dead Island. I think this one has a lot more character to it, and it's just a little bit more fun to explore. And the driving force for you visiting all of these areas is that you're moving your survivors from campsite to campsite. This is very much a story of survival. It's not too campy or silly, even though you'll find a lot of those elements sprinkled throughout the game, whether they're intentional or not. You also travel through what could be considered your obligatory sewer section in this game, but it's actually repurposed World War II bunker tunnel things, which kept it a little more interesting, and they also didn't overstay their welcome. It was a pretty quick section, so I can't really complain about it.
Oh, this is fucking useless. I'm ruined.
But all in all, I think the environment's pretty enjoyable. Decent amount of verticality, stuff to explore, vehicles to drive. And on that note, when it comes to the driving and the gameplay, it's basically identical to the first game. They add a few new weapons and things here and there, but for all intents and purposes, it's exactly the same. If you played Dead Island 1, you can actually import your character into this one, depending on the platform you play on. It can be played single player or in co-op, and if you're gonna play this, I highly recommend the co-op. It's so much more fun. I actually had 2 Xboxes to do some local co-op with a friend and my girlfriend, and it was a pretty good time, to be honest with you. If the environment in Riptide is the star of the show, then secondary to that obviously has to be the gameplay, and they bring back that melee first shooting secondary RPG influenced gameplay that you either loved or hated from the first game. This game has some RPG influenced elements to it. You got skill trees that you can upgrade that give you new abilities as you progress. When you first start the game, you can choose to have a survivor build or like a combat first build, and your skill tree will have extra attributes added to it when you start the game. Or you can just have a clean balanced stat build at the beginning of the game and then build it as you see fit depending on how you like to play. And this is again going to be the dumbest comparison I can make like it was in the first game, but this is basically the Borderlands of zombie games, and I'm gonna say that because I know it's gonna piss somebody off. Yeah, tonally, story, and gameplay wise, this basically has absolutely nothing to do with Borderlands, but that same fundamental aspect of killing things, gaining XP, leveling up, and grinding is basically what you do in both games. So if you kind of like that style of gameplay in games like Borderlands, then you might notice a few of those cues in this. This is a total first-person game, and you may have noticed this by now, but melee combat is definitely the primary in this game. You got a lot of different sharp and blunt weapons of different varieties. I would say the melee combat is 90% of the game. The gunplay in Riptide is just okay. There's nothing to write home about. It's very much just something that exists just to kind of be there. It's serviceable and it works, but it just lacks that punch that makes it really fun or memorable. This isn't getting me anywhere. It's like I'm shooting him with a Nerf gun or something. That being said, Riptide does add a couple of projectile guns in the game, like a nail gun, a harpoon, and those are much more fun. I had a blast with the nail gun. But when it comes to that bullet-based variety, I just really couldn't be bothered to care for it. But when it comes to the gameplay overall, that gameplay loop of just hunting for materials and money to go buy certain parts from a vendor and then take some duct tape and strap on a saw blade to a bat, or taking some barbed wire and a car battery to a katana to electrify it, is just some of the most satisfying things you can do in a game like this. It's really fun, and again, it's just one of the unique features about Dead Island. Oh no! Oh god, I'm surrounded, and my mod won't let me shut the gun. Oh, why did I tape a sword to a gun? That was so stupid. Would you ever actually do something like this in real life?
Probably not, but the idea of it is really cool, and it sounds like it would be a fun way to knock some zombies out. Riptide allows you to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking this gun is pretty powerful, but you know what would make it even better? A sword on it.
I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. So I'm a zombie now. So yeah, all that item looting that you're doing will carry over into the side quest. You might find a guy in the fetal position looking for some white powder. That's a real side quest in the game.
White powder, the kind you know, put up your nose.
So as you're gathering supplies, you're coming across other survivors that need help. Maybe they want you to gather some supplies, and over time they'll just give you more money for whatever you find. Or you can find supplies that you can sell at your base camp. There will be multiple hub areas or base camps in the game, and this is where you'll pick up your side and main quests. And one thing that's really worth mentioning here is that they fixed a big issue that I had with the first game, that being that you actually see your survivor teammates in the world with you when you're playing. Whether you're in co-op or single player, when you're at the base camp, there'll actually be the other members at your party there. Now you're actually able to see Sam B and Logan chatting about what's going on in the world while you're playing the game.
Oh yeah, this is so much better than just using one or the other.
And it doesn't just stop at them standing there and having a little bit of dialogue. There's actually sections in the game where you'll have to fend off your base camp from zombies. This typically seems to happen right before an area change or right when you get to the camp. So you'll be barricading up the doors and the windows, and you'll have to fend off the waves of zombies until it all cools down. Now there's actually sections in the game where you can fight alongside your teammates, and it's really cool. It gives a little bit more meaning to the cooperation in the story. Granted, yeah, it would have been cool to actually have them be able to follow you around and fight with you as the story progressed if you were playing by yourself, but that would have obviously taken significantly more effort.
Now I owe you something, motherfucker.
It is cool, however, it is a little bit easy. It goes on and on and on, and you start to realize that the zombies just kind of favor attacking the AI, and the AI is never in too much danger, so you're able to fend them off pretty easy. They were a bit repetitive because they kind of overuse these. You do it a lot throughout the story, and the first couple of times it's cool, but it starts to overstay its welcome. If you just had like half as many sections where this happened and it was about half the length of time to progress through it, would have been a little bit better. And when it comes to those quests, like I said, the story's nothing to write home about. It's usually just your generic fetch quest, go get this item, bring it back. But they tie it into the story very well. Everything you do, whether it's a main quest or a side quest, the side quest can actually feel like it's a main quest at times. So it's a little bit more rewarding than your general open world game where you got 50 boxes to check off and it's just your generic fetch quest. It actually kind of feels like you're doing something meaningful.
If you bring us the right supplies, you can take advantage of our talents too.
All in all, I'd say when it comes to the quest and the story, it's pretty good. It's serviceable enough up until the end, where I think the ending just completely sucks. If you want to know what that is, I'll play it at the end of the video. But what really holds the game together, obviously, is the gameplay. It's really fun. The gameplay loop is addicting, and they've obviously designed it for you to play through the game with multiple characters. Everybody has their own unique attributes. While Sam B's over here good with heavy blunt weapons, you might have Logan over here good with the throwables. So everybody has their own unique attributes that keep the game interesting in that way. Their dialogue will slightly vary based on who you're playing as, and you start off with different skill tree attributes. So if you're the type of person that likes to get into the grind of the game and progressively max out all of the characters, this is something that you'll be doing that in. Whether or not you're going to actually spend the time maxing out all of your characters, though, is going to depend heavily on whether you enjoy this type of gameplay or not. And again, depending on if you've played the first game or not, all of that jank still carries over. And if you didn't enjoy it then, you're not really going to enjoy it now.
Bruh.
One of the glaring things you notice about going back to an older game like this is the loading screens, and they can be painful, dude, especially playing on older hardware like the 360. If I was playing on PC, the loading screens probably would have been near instant, but when I was going back to the 360, you have to load in new environments. So if you're going to a new part of the town, or you're going inside an interior that's heavily detailed for a main story quest, you'll have to wait for it to load, and then you start the mission once it all loads up, and then you gotta wait for it to load again. When you exit the building,
building, and if you accidentally went inside of one of these buildings when you didn't want to, that's 2 loading screens you gotta sit through. There's a lot of points peppered throughout the map where there's these little boss battles with these special mutated zombies, and they all have their own special little areas, and these are areas that have to load in whenever you want to do them. It's like little arenas that are separate from the map. The immersion's a little broken with the loading, but the main jank of the game is in the gameplay. Again, the movement can be a little awkward at times, the gravity can feel a little weird. There's some minor platforming segments in the game, and I'm glad that they're minor because it just really highlights the awkwardness of the gravity and everything. Generally, moving around is okay, but when it comes to actually platforming on higher sections in the map, jumping over boxes or climbing ladders, the game starts to slow down and get a little sloppy. For me, it was kind of hard to gauge fall damage. Like, sometimes I would fall and think that I would really get hurt and I didn't, or I would think, oh, there won't be any fall damage from this at all, and there goes half my health. The vehicles that you can drive, like the trucks and the boats, are okay, but one thing I noticed from the boat sections is that you can't swim. It seems like in most games, swimming is just a no-brainer, but in this game, they were like, nah. Hardened survivors that have been able to survive a zombie outbreak? Yeah, sure, but we're not gonna let them swim. That would make too much sense. And while I do feel that the combat is fun, for me personally, that doesn't change the fact that it's a little clunky. There's always been this ongoing conversation about how first-person melee combat is always a little clunky, and that comes into play here. Sometimes you just kind of misjudge how close you are to an enemy and miss your swings, or you're too close, and everything you do takes stamina, so you'll run out of stamina pretty easily when you're swinging in front of a huge crowd of enemies, and that can get a little frustrating when you're constantly out of stamina. When you're out of stamina, the zombies can just one-shot you down to the ground, and it can get a little overwhelming sometimes. And that really sucks because as you're moving along in the game and you're getting further ahead, you get bigger cash penalties for getting knocked down, so you're losing like 15 to 2,000 at a time, and it's like, man, I could have bought a lot of stuff with that. For me, though, the gameplay is fun. It was satisfying to get new weapon mods, and you're probably not going to see everything there is to see in one playthrough. I probably had like 15 weapon mods, and I only did like 5 of them in my whole playthrough, so there's quite a bit of variety to keep you interested. Not to mention, nowadays you can get the game for $5, and for me that was a complete steal. I feel like for $5 it's more than worth the money, especially if you plan on doing it co-op with a friend like I did. These clay faces though might haunt you in your dreams, so don't say I didn't warn you about that. Outside of the clunk, I think it's a pretty damn good time, man. I got about 13 hours out of the story. If I was doing all of the side stuff and trying to get all of the mods, I would have spent a lot more time doing that. If you do decide to play it, I would recommend not playing Dead Island 1 and Riptide back to back because you'll probably burn yourself out. But taken on its own, I would say it's definitely worth a shot.
Come on, they're tearing me apart!
Oh, 10 years of the same game. Oh, Pizza's here. Oh, wow, a zombie. What's up, dude? I haven't seen one of you since Dying Light. Wow, Dead Island 2. It's about time.
This music's not gonna get us demonetized, is it?
Nope, this ain't a joke or a troll. The game actually does exist, and it's right here in my hand, but you guys knew that. The game's been out for a few weeks now. Your boy doesn't get a review code, so I couldn't get this out on release day. Don't listen to this guy. He's just too lazy to edit the video in a reasonable amount of time. After surviving 9 years, 4 developers, countless delays, and a pandemic, Dead Island 2 has actually been released. I'm holding it. They decided to hand over the scraps left by Jaeger on the cutting room floor over to Dambuster Studios and said, let them cook.
We're out of food!
It's nothing short of a miracle that this game has not only seen the light of day at all, but stuck so close to the original concept we saw back in 2015. All too often, games in development hell either never see the light of day or they release as a shell of what they were. But today I'm excited to talk about whether or not it was worth Deep Silver keeping this thing on life support for all of this time.
Quake did this. Definitely not some giant monster.
I think what surprised me the most is just how much Dambuster Studios stuck to that original concept from Jaeger back in 2015 when they were the developer. If you guys aren't new to the channel, you'd know that this isn't the first time we've played Dead Island 2. And if you have a keen eye, you'll definitely notice some carryover all the way back from 2015. First off is obviously the setting of sunny California. Yeah, zombies in California. That one's aged pretty well.
God,
This is beyond insane.
If you want to know what life is like for washed up 90s band members or celebrities stuck inside of their mansions in the middle of a zombie outbreak, you're in for a treat. You'll be breaking and entering across a variety of notable locations in LA like Beverly Hills and Venice Beach. Those are notable locations, right? I don't know shit about California. However, with the game taking place in California, I don't understand why they're labeled as Malibu. You'll make some time to go to the movie studios, and you'll also even visit the sewers, so sewer level lovers rejoice because they got you covered.
Daylight.
The sewer levels in the other locations are great, but that's not the only thing they brought back from 2015. You may have noticed the strong-ass firefighter swinging a mace on the original concept art, and in the final release there's also a strong-ass firefighter that's an exotic dancer. You can actually play as him, and you can also use a mace, just like they showed in the concept art. I also noticed the return of a slobber. I'm about to slobber trying to say that. A zombie variant from the 2015 build. There's plenty of small things you can make comparisons to in the old alpha, like flamethrower mods on knives, but if that's something you'd be interested in seeing further, let me know and we might take a deep dive into it.
Are there worm-like things wriggling around in it?
What?
Dead Island 2 is a lot more than reused ideas, however, because you got a fresh cast of characters, including someone that's totally not Lil Pump, and all of them boast unique attributes that give them special gameplay advantages.
Gun.
But we'll get into that a little bit later. You have a unique variety of locations to play in, a nice variety of tools to slay with, and a surprisingly decent story for a zombie game, albeit a little simple, but what were you expecting from a game called Dead Island?
So get out there and act like the leader they need.
Yeah. Jimmy Montana.
Shut your holes, you bitches! Jimmy Montana's in charge now!
I can't win.
Unlike the first game, which baited and switched us with a deep emotional trailer to just end up being a goofy hack and slash that took itself a little too seriously, Dead Island 2 unashamedly lets you know what it's about right off of the bat.
Ticket, please.
Oh, sorry. Must be mine with Jackie.
This'll do.
Every survivor is heading for the last flight out of LA, and this time, it's not because of the cost of living. A zombie apocalypse has taken over, and of course that infection spreads to your exit ticket, leaving you sprawling back down to the city. Who could have seen that coming? As a surprise to absolutely nobody, you end up being bit, but don't turn into a zombie like 99% of the population does, because you're the special one. You're the hero of this stuff. Fucking stupid. This is similar to the Cyberpunk story in the sense that you progressively learn about something strange going on with your body, which will impact the gameplay and the story in the later half.
You've got your eyes wide shut.
The game has a serious undertone, but doesn't miss any opportunity to make fun of the Hollywood culture and goofy situation you found yourself in. Come on, up, 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 up. You got it, come on. Yeah, baby! I've been standing here for 10 minutes. He's still going. All right, I'm just gonna lay here and take a nap. You let me know when you're done with that, all right? Characters are fun to interact with, and it strikes the right balance of serious when it matters with a side of fun to space out the monotony, in my opinion.
And Jessie, she counts as a fan, right?
Oh, sure. Sure, that's why she bought all that crazy soundproofing for her room. Padded it right up. Just didn't want any new track spoilers.
Oh, shit. I thought she just didn't want to hear us doing it anymore.
One funny quirk about the cutscenes is that they were obviously designed to accommodate a party of people. It's definitely not as painfully obvious as the first game, but if you're playing solo, a lot of times you'll just end up getting referred to as they.
I need to get my head together.
Hey, come on, she's gonna be okay. They're gonna find her. Come on, let's plan.
I'm the only one here. There's also no lack of video game cliche in the cutscenes here, because you'll constantly find yourself separated from the other characters when it comes time to fight. There's a scripted moment later in the game where you see your crew fighting off a horde, which is hilarious because there isn't a single moment that happens in the real gameplay. Oh, yeah, okay, so you take care of this and I gotta go finish dinner, so this is the 4th time today. If you're a fan of the original games, you'll be happy to know that Dead Island 2 brings back all the same looting, smashing, and exploring that you came to love or absolutely despise from the first game. It feels like Dan Buster really understood the source material and wanted to make the most faithful return to form possible. Everything from opening up abandoned suitcases for scrap materials and money to bringing up the weapon wheel feels like coming home from a long trip to Benoit. There's somebody else that comes back from a long trip to Benoit too.
And I'm Sam B. You know, who do you voodoo
voodoo, bitch.
You even slam down protein bars and energy drinks for health, which is just another beautiful touch that brings it back home. 1 second. Alright. I'm ready now. Melee combat is the main focus here, and it feels good. It's nothing very flashy on the surface. It feels kind of slow and weighty, but that actually makes it feel good.
What does that even mean?
Wow, this is just so therapeutic. You get a variety of blunt, sharp, and ranged weapons that can be later modified with elemental abilities and skill perks to shred through hordes of zombies. Might not seem like it, but this saw blade here adds 30 damage. Don't ask me how it works. The zombies have a realistic set of physics to them, so knocking them off of a building or through a pane of glass and watching that dismembered body fly while spraying blood all over the place is the kind of satisfying thing you'd expect from a good movie scene, except you'll be the one swinging the weapons through LA. You can tell that Dan Buster had a very focused goal in mind, and they made sure that it was one that would actually get released in a timely manner, but that's not a bad thing at all.
Enjoy your movie night. I got this.
This is a zombie slasher through and through. There aren't any raider battles, there isn't any companion AI to worry about getting broken, and there are no vehicles to help you through an empty open world. Instead of trying to get a little too ambitious like other developers, Ubisoft, Dan Buster opted to ditch the open world concept for more focused hub areas that you travel between.
The Sterling Hotel.
At first, I was really worried that this would end up making the game feel very linear without room for exploration, but that doesn't seem to be a problem at all here. Does that sound like I'm reading off of a script? There's still freedom to explore the environment as you please, taking on side missions, gathering supplies, and earning XP as you see fit.
Help! Dee Dee! Deactivate! Dee Dee, turn off!
I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of details in the game that I figured would have been an oversight. There's plenty of buildings to explore that you could just totally skip through, but they'll reward you with new gear or storytelling for taking the time to look through them. There's also zombified characters that are location specific that you'll find in a lot of these locations, and they'll reward you with keys to locked off areas of the game that'll reward you with more loot if you take the time to find them and then put them to bed one last time for good, which is just more reason to explore the areas in the game. Are you Josh?
Yes, I'm Josh. I've been here for 3 weeks waiting on you to get here. Can you please end me? Please, grab the,
just
point the gun at my head.
Now that I know your name and everything, I feel kind of bad about doing
Point
this.
the gun at my head.
What really makes this accuracy to the source material even more impressive is how they translated this gameplay to an entirely new engine.
That looked good!
The move to Unreal was an excellent choice in my opinion, and it shows just how talented the team working with it is. This more focused approach to the gameplay gave Dan Buster the ability to just craft so much beautiful detail into these locations. It's just filled to the brim with this detail that otherwise might not have been possible if they had just tried to make it one continuous open world.
I'm gonna find her.
Ah, cool. Looks like we're gonna have the place to ourselves.
You'll also enjoy the benefit of these locations, including a day and night mode, which can drastically change the feel of it. In the daytime, this feels like a fun hack and slash, and in the nighttime, it can feel genuinely unsettling. I think what's really unsettling is that none of the mirrors in this game work. This visual treat is accompanied by great sound design, in my opinion. Every weapon has a satisfying crunch or wavelength equivalent of a hot knife through butter. It just blends along well with the fresh soundtrack that further pushes the fun, playful nature of the game's sunny California setting.
This music's not gonna get us demonetized, is it?
It's not just these elements that have been improved, however, because you have a fresh physics system to play with. Each level is filled with glass to break, objects to knock over, and of course, zombies to slash. The star of the show here is obviously the zombies, and to say they got an overhaul would be an understatement. Damn, you look bad. But in a good way. I love what you've done with your hair. They went to great lengths to make them feel like natural parts of the environment. You'll find them digging through trash cans, stumbling over each other, and even crawling out of closed off areas as you come across them, which I thought was a really impressive touch. However, nothing could have been more impressive to me than just the act of obliterating them. Where the gameplay absolutely shines is in what Dan Buster has coined the flesh system. Breaking bones and cutting limbs played a part in the original Dead Island, but Dan Buster just takes it to the next level here. Each zombie is rocking a skeleton, organs, and skin that you can individually damage based on how you hit it and what you hit it with. You can break jawbones, leave arms hanging by the skin after you break the bones. You can slice limbs off with a fast swing, leaving pools of blood spewing behind them, and you can burn and melt the skin to a crisp. Chunks of muscle will fly. Can I even be saying this stuff without YouTube demonetizing this video? Chunks of muscle will fly off in a different way every time that you strike it, and blood just goes all over the place. It's a really stunning visual treat, an incredible feature that makes the replay value so fun. I don't think I've enjoyed slashing through hordes of zombies this much since Left 4 Dead 2, which is really saying something for me. And just like with any game, variety is the spice of life, or the undead spice of the undead. Special zombies make a return in Dead Island 2. You have the classics like Crushers, Bursters, otherwise known as Bussers, and the Butchers, now known as Apex variants here, which have been incredibly implemented into the world.
They must be close.
Huh?
As you play, they'll get added into the environment, and they usually come along with really well done story cutscenes that I don't even want to spoil here, but they're pretty good. It's like they looked at the original cutscenes and said, yeah, we can do that, but 10 times better.
Here is my address in case you change your mind. Good luck.
With friends like you, I'll need it.
I'll call the army, send help.
You also have new Apex variants, of course, like the Mutators, which are easily the most terrifying out of all of them. They shoot projectiles and they'll grab you and go in for the kill if you're too close to them. They're a real pain in the ass. You also have one called the Screamer, which sounds incredibly similar to a special infected that was cut from Left 4 Dead. As the name suggests, it'll scream at you so loud that a shockwave comes out of it, pushing you away from it, and this will also attract nearby zombies to its location, which makes it all the more painful to deal with. The noise that the Screamer produces also has to be one of the most disorienting sounds that I've heard in a video game. But what really helps that flash system stand out is the weapon mods. The dumbbell on the weapon provides a workout. Like the original, modifying your kitchen knife with some duct tape and a flamethrower is still a childlike dream experiment come true. But just like with the flesh system, Dead Island 2 took it up a notch.
Use the workbench and let's get cooking.
So what you're gonna do is tape the gun to the drill, and what's gonna happen is it's gonna spread the bullets in a radial pattern. You'll also still find blueprints for weapon mods within the levels, be able to buy them, or get them as mission rewards.
I got this big sword I used on the Knights of the Sound Fable tour. You want it?
The bigger the better.
These blueprints will allow you to do a variety of different weapon modifications to almost any weapon you find in the game. It works! The only weapons that I don't think get weapon mods in the game are these makeshift ones that are just kind of like scrap items. You can also scrap the weapons in your inventory for crafting materials, which is pretty useful, especially if you're just getting rid of an old weapon. Well, guess I won't be needing this. These mods will give you more swinging force, deal heavier attacks that inflict bleeding, or can deal an array of elemental damage. Water, fire, electricity, and acid, not the kind that this guy's been doing, all play a big part in Dead Island 2. It's truly the last airbender of zombie games. Oh shit. Watch out, Aang, that zombie is electric bending. These elemental properties that affect a pool of liquid on the ground that are usually kept in containers can also be harnessed through a sledgehammer, a bladed weapon, or a ranged weapon, giving you the ability to set them on fire, shock, or melt them at a swing or shot's notice. You even have the ability to collect and harness zombie parts for weapon modifications in the future, which is definitely not something that I was expecting, but wait, there's more. You can stack ability cards on top of the modifications to give you even more freedom, and this freedom of gameplay translates into the weapons of freedom. Just like how you can use these modifiers to give melee weapons more heavy attack damage or striking speed, you can give your pistol sleight of hand pro and turn zombies into a Modern Warfare 2 montage. The melee weapons start to feel a little bit samey after a while, with all of the mods doing virtually the same thing, but it was never not fun. The same elemental mods can be applied to guns, aka ranged weapons as well, so if you've ever wanted to know what an acid round would do, Dead Island 2 gives you that experience.
My skin's melting. How'd you get acid in a shotgun shell? What? Ow, this hurts so bad. Ow, oh.
While we're on the subject of gunplay, I gotta be honest with you, it's pretty fun. I was really hoping there would be a little bit more ripping and tearing with weapons like the shotgun, but they're fun to use and they're a hell of a lot better than whatever the first game was doing. You also have your throwable weapons, but now they're known as curveballs. These unlock as you rank up and give you a variety of explosives, sharp objects, and liquids all to yeet at the zombies. Or you could just throw your weapons if you really want to. I rarely ever did this, so I couldn't find a clip of me doing it, so here's a Zelda clip. All of these gameplay elements are pretty similar to the first game, but don't let that fool you because Dead Island 2 has a few cards up its sleeve. You see how I did that? No, of course you don't. I didn't explain that feature of the game, but I will now. Then you'll get the joke. Oh yeah, I got one for you. Go fish.
This is a draw 4. We're playing Uno.
Dambuster said they didn't want your typical RPG skill tree, so they decided to cut down the tree and make a deck of cards out of it. When I first heard about this card system, I immediately thought of Back 4 Blood. AKA, I thought, well, guess it's gonna be now.
This is all gonna work out great.
You!
But they actually surprised me with this one. You don't just find cards scattered all over the map, although I think you can occasionally find a few. You get skill cards as you rank up, just like a normal leveling system. These will grant your character different attributes like the ability to gain health after dodging at the right time or making zombies stumble back whenever you use a med kit. Your card system will also unlock new abilities like blocking or ground pounding to deliver a mini earthquake around you. You can only use a certain amount of cards at once for each attribute, which allows you to mix and match the skill buffs to match your playstyle. Wow, you look pretty tough, but you're not ready for my new skill deck.
That's it?
The really swag money thing about this card system is that you can also stack abilities to work with each other. For example, you could use a card that'll stumble zombies from an ability and then stack that with a card that'll do more damage to stumbled zombies. There's a lot of room for experimentation with this and to be able to make a card set that really fits your playstyle. I couldn't give a single fuck about blocking in a game like this, but I really like the dodge mechanic, so that's what I use throughout the game. When it comes to the difficulty, I noticed that difficulty isn't really much of a thing, at least in the risk of the game. Oh no. Oh, we're right back in? You'll occasionally come across zombies that are higher level than you, but for the most part, they'll just level up as you do. The biggest roadblock would probably end up being your actual weapon level, but even with that, you can just level it up as you go with money. I'm not sure how difficulty scales in the co-op because I played the game solo, but I imagine it wouldn't be too different. That being said, I was playing this after just coming off of a few Tarkov sessions, which made the more laid-back nature of this game kind of refreshing, to be honest with you.
Come on.
I can't do it.
Why? Why not?
I can't.
I'm not waiting here any more longer. Hey!
I am gonna warn you though, if you play this game, expect a huge difficulty spike towards the end of the game. The ending level of the game was the most frustrated I've been with this game, but I also realized that I was winging it more than anything with my weapon layout. Once I got a little bit more intention with my mods, it was quite a bit easier, and that just goes to show you how your weapon and card setup can affect your gameplay experience. One part about the gameplay experience I did not like was the obvious sections that just felt like padding. Why does every single gate in this city have a missing breaker box? First off, you find yourself in a sewer level, and we all know those are dog shit. The sewer level doesn't overstay its welcome, which is fine, but one of the gameplay elements in that sewer level does. You have this part where you're turning water valves to regulate pressure to a pump, which is basically a numbers matching game that'll tie you up for a few minutes. Instead of making this a one and done deal, they ended up using this multiple times throughout the game, and there was nothing fun about this to me at all. Well, you guys don't like tedious puzzle segments that just immediately affect your mindless hack and slash game? Another thing that wasn't fun was playing Blue's Clues anytime I had to be the local private investigator. Yep, just as I thought. Looks like Dad took a suitcase with him when he went out for cigarettes. That was 20 years ago. Doing it occasionally to build some story is fine, but not when it screeches the gameplay to a halt. I came here to play hack and slash zombie game, not Detective Pikachu or Super Mario Plumber. Just let me stop. Where's the controller? Just let me stop spamming the X button and let me get back to slashing zombies, please. At the end of the day, like the original, it's not a perfect game. If you didn't enjoy the pseudo RPG melee combat from the original, you might not like this one. But if you were a fan of the original, or you're just looking for a mindless fun zombie slasher, I think you might dig it. But for $70, damn, why are games so expensive now? I think it's a very fun game, and nothing short of a miracle that it exists at all. It scratches an itch that I've had for a long time, and I think that if any of this gameplay impresses you, then it's worth checking out. But you know what else is worth checking out?
I'm down!
My bad, man. I thought you were a zombie.
I'm gonna do you guys a favor, alright? I'm gonna do you a solid. I'm gonna save you the trouble of watching this entire video by summarizing my thoughts completely in a Jakey quote.
Goopy Goblin Gamer Brain basically means that you have little to no patience for anything that isn't fun or engaging second-to-second gameplay. You know, the type of monotonous shit that more and more games have that take away control from the player just to service some mediocre-ass story while you just sit there being like, okay, but can we get back to the fun part where I blow up cars? That's Goopy Goblin Gamer Brain.
I feel like this perfectly encapsulates my thoughts on this because this game doesn't have an engaging story or deep gameplay mechanics, but the gameplay loop, man, that's what's activating the little dopamine things in my head. It's what's kept me playing for years on end over the course of this game's launch. I played the Dead Center campaign way more times than I can even think, but for some reason, I just can't get sick of it because it's just so fun. Left 4 Dead 2 is a fun-ass game. It is the zombie game. It's the zombie game that you should be playing. When it came to zombie games, especially when this one was released, you had a lot of options on your hand. You got the Borderlands zombie games, Dead Island. You got the Parkour Mirror's Edge of zombie games, Dying Light. You got the Plants vs. Zombies of Plants vs. Zombies zombie games, Plants vs. Zombies. You even had zombies for Call of Duty. So what kind of zombie game is Left 4 Dead? I guess you could most notably consider it the Counter-Strike a zombie game, seeing as it's built on the source engine which Counter-Strike was founded, and the team-based gameplay even further insinuates that.
Grabbing heroin.
But to be honest with you, I think it's easiest to compare to Call of Duty Zombies, but more fun. You see, in both Call of Duty Zombies and Left 4 Dead, you have a cooperative team type of gameplay. You play with 3 other people, so you got a 4-man team or 4-woman team, we're not discriminating here. And your objective is pretty simple. Either survive as long as you can or move to the next objective point without dying or losing your team. If you can aim and shoot, you can play this game. There's no complex gameplay mechanics unless you're talking about the speedrun boys who obviously know the technical shortcuts and stuff, but it's extremely simple. From the second you step into the game, all you have to do is pick up gun and shoot the zombie things. You have Special Infected to break up some of the gameplay segments to make it more interesting. So you go from fighting these relentless hordes of zombies to fighting these Special Infected here and there, all ranging with different abilities. You got the Smoker, which can grab you from a distance. You got the Boomer, which can spray you with boomer stuff that attracts the zombies towards you. You got the Witch, who's kind of just a bitchy nuisance, and you got the Tank, who is, well, I mean, name's pretty self-explanatory there. But here's the thing about Call of Duty Zombies, right? Here's my beef, and I feel like this is something they're probably going to address in Black Ops Cold War, to be fair. But in Call of Duty Zombies, you start out with a pistol, and I get it. You start out with a pistol, and the progression is moving through the rounds to upgrade your weapons and whatnot. But you start out with a pistol, and you gotta slowly wait for the zombies to come in. You gotta wait for them to break down the barriers, and you don't really start getting into the action until the later rounds when it really starts picking up and the zombies start running. But in Left 4 Dead, you're immediately, like, through the first door, you're fucking facing hordes of zombies. Dude, I can't even talk. But Left 4 Dead, from the first mission of the first campaign, and this can go for Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2, you go through that first door and you're immediately greeted with the zombies. You shoot them, you move in to the next room. You shoot them, and you just keep doing that. And you keep doing that. You're not leveling up. You're not upgrading. So why do you keep doing it? What is the motivator to keep playing Left 4 Dead 2 or Left 4 Dead, even though Left 4 Dead 2 has the entire Left 4 Dead campaign if you play on PC? Side note, if you're going to play this game, play it on PC. It's a completely different game. And to answer your question, I don't really know. I don't know what keeps me playing this. It's just fun. It's fun to aim the gun and shoot the zombies, dude. There's just something immediately satisfying. It's like Call of Duty. It just feels good to immediately get that objective completed and get the satisfaction of doing the thing, and in this game you're constantly doing the thing, and doing the thing is good. Yeah, the characters will throw out witty quips about the levels here and there as you progress through it.
In 1975, the local township... You know what? I just realized I don't care.
But I think it would be a stretch to say that Left 4 Dead's campaign is really what you play it for.
Maybe the helicopter. Maybe it's made of chocolate.
You know, come to think of it, that's something that I heavily criticized Kane and Lynch 2 for, right? The campaign missions ended and began kind of the same way every single time. You thought you were on your way into the green, on your way out, and then everything went bad, and you had to fight your way through the level to get on to the next segment where you do the thing again. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun because Kane and Lynch 2's gameplay was ass. But Left 4 Dead's gameplay is fun. It's fun to do that. It's fun to play the same levels over and over and over. Even if you know you're gonna get rescued at the end of the level, and then the beginning level in the next quote-unquote campaign would just be the helicopter crashing or something, and you doing the same thing again. You knew what to expect, but it was always fun. And there was enough variety in the gameplay and the levels to keep you playing. You know, it's been a while since I played Left 4 Dead. I would say it's been at least a good 6 months to a year, but I got a friend to download it while it was like $2. And there was a new officially supported content update on PC made by the community, which was officially released through Steam by Valve, I suppose, which brought even more content into the game. Here we are over a decade later talking about a game that came out in 2009, still getting content updates, still being played by probably thousands of people. Something that is so beloved enough, even in its simplistic gameplay, that there's a new content update coming out in 2020. How about that? And while we're on the subject of content, let's talk about the PC version. Obviously, to most of you guys, this is a no-brainer. But on the off chance that you were playing this on console and you're kind of reminiscing about it today, you are doing yourself an extreme disservice to not pick this thing up on PC right now. I mean, the Xbox version, it's alright, but it is nothing like the PC version. When you get into that, it's like a completely different game. It plays so much better, even on low-end PC hardware. It doesn't matter. I got my friend to pick this up for like $2, which is a steal for a game like this, and he's had so much fun with it. The funny thing is to me, the graphics and visuals hold up very well. The zombies dismemberment is a really cool fucking gameplay element. I remember when they were first showing off this new zombie dismemberment in the Left 4 Dead 2 gameplay previews, and it was really cool tech for the time, and to me it still holds up surprisingly well today. It looks very good, and it just adds to the fun in the gameplay. This game just wouldn't be quite the same without the gore. Shout out to the Australian version boys who never got this game with the gore. I'm so sorry. F's in the chat, my heart goes out to you. Hopefully you got around to being able to play the legit version by now. It's been like 10 years.
Weep my ass.
But on PC, you would probably have no problem running this thing max settings. 120, 144 hertz, that's like 144 frames per second, is compared to Xbox where you were only running it at like 30 frames per second. Nerdy technical terms aside, it's just super fun and super smooth on PC. That's not even including all of the custom maps, all of the custom campaigns, all of the custom weapon skins, all of the custom characters, all the mods. This is one of those games that really showed me the beauty of PC gaming and the beauty of modding your games. And today, I mean, you have to put in no effort to put mods into this thing. You just go onto the Steam Marketplace, click the mod you want, and it's installed in your game with no effort. I've got like 30 different mods that overlap each other, so it's like every time I pop into a game, I play with something new that I didn't remember putting into this. It's so funny because my game syncs up with the cloud, so it just throws random mods in that I've had downloaded for like the past 7 years. It's so crazy, dude.
Dumb shit.
Also, in the PC community, you may be surprised to hear that the multiplayer community is still very strong with this thing. You'll have no problem jumping in and playing any campaign. And then if you really get tired of the simple gameplay loop that Left 4 Dead offers, you can mix it up with some spicy new gameplay modes in the multiplayer, like the Versus mode, where one team plays a special infected trying to stop the other team from completing the campaign, giving even more gameplay depth to these special infected characters, which is really awesome. Or you have the survival game mode where you can just kind of see how long you last, and it'll constantly throw tanks at you to try to ruin your game, which is
Not good. Step slow, y'all. Boomer around.
I don't know. I never really got into that one, to be honest with you. I'm not even gonna lie. But hey, man, it's challenging. It's something there for you to play if you want to. Unlimited gameplay options, baby. More variety. I ain't gonna be mad about it. I remember back in the day, I'm not sure if it's really a thing, but there would always be a new community game mode that would show up in the playlist. I'm not really sure if that's still a thing that occurs, but that was a cool thing that you had. And there's a few other little gameplay types that you can mess around with, but the heart, the meat and potatoes of the game would be probably the campaign mode, which honestly, I never get sick of playing. So, yeah, it's always fun to see what goofy stuff you're going to get through with a new team.
We will not leave a man behind.
Even playing offline, the AI isn't too bad. However, the one gripe I have about the AI in Left 4 Dead 2 is they don't use melee weapons. I don't think they use throwables either, which was always a weird quirk about the game. Always kind of felt awkward with you being the only one that could use melee weapons, but hey, that's just a sign of the times, I guess. I don't know. Basically, the point I'm trying to get across with this video is that Left 4 Dead 2 is really lit. You should give it a shot if you haven't played it, and I'm still going to be playing it, especially with this new content update. There's no better time than today to get into this game, and I'm pretty sure as long as there's never a Left 4 Dead 3, there's always going to be people playing this. Also, don't forget on the PC version, you basically get the first game free as well. So, yeah, that's something else to just kind of keep in mind there.